OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 7:30. It is Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Owen in studio and Nathan on the line. We're talking football because there's lots of stories to get to. We're also going to end up talking boxing because it turns out Bernard Dunne has officially left the Irish Amateur Boxing Association in the aftermath of a pre-Olympics dossier that was anonymously leaked, which was critical of his role. He obviously went and was part of the backroom team that did really, really well at the Olympic Games and looks like somebody who is going to be a massive loss to Irish boxing. So it appears as if Irish boxing has once again shot itself in the foot. That's a Vincent Hogan exclusive on the back of The Independent this morning. Talk about that a little bit later on as well. In the meantime, though, Chelsea, the sale is looking a little bit fractured. One of the Kilcoo players has said he doesn't want to play for Down and that most of his teammates don't want to play for Down, that the whole situation is a shambles. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. And whatever you're having, hashtag is OTBAM. You can text us this morning, 0879 180 180. Nathan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
When it was 2-0 to Villarreal last night at half-time, was it like, this is fine, this is no big deal, this is totally to be expected, we've seen this before from this Liverpool team, or are you like, oh my God, what the hell's happening here?
A little bit of both, because we haven't seen this from this Liverpool team certainly over this season. They've had a level of consistency where the craziness that maybe marked the first few years of the Klopp reign, where it was a bit go, as John Giles always said, and a bit helter-skelter, they've far more control this season. So to put in their worst 45 minutes of the season away from home at Villarreal, you were going in at halftime thinking, another one of these brilliant European nights, but this time it's Liverpool are on the wrong end of it. But I did feel at halftime when Villarreal hadn't got the third goal that at 2-0, Liverpool had the bench. And I think that was the most reassuring aspect for Liverpool supporters was Jordan Henderson, Luis Diaz. Everybody's expecting both of them to come on. In the end, it was just Diaz who came on at halftime. But they've shown consistently over the past few months that when they make changes, they make an impact. And the second Diaz came on, it was a totally different game. His willingness to get on the ball, his want to just run at Villarreal again and again and again, and the threat that he posed just seemed to up everything for Liverpool. But because it was 2-2 on aggregate, if they were 2-0 down and it was 2-0 on aggregate, I think you would have fancied Villarreal with all their European experience and their know-how to hold out. But Liverpool have just so much depth and so much talent and an ability to win any type of game at the moment. When you look back at what they've done over the last couple of weeks, depending on the opponent, I think a lot of people expected Liverpool to see that out in the second half.
We did say on the show yesterday, Eoin, that crazy things happened in the Champions League semi-final, and crazy things did happen in that first half.
Like it's interesting. Like it's what was the problem for Liverpool in that first half? Like Andy Robertson was kind of comparing the Madrigal to Anfield afterwards last night, and I think that probably does come into it a little bit. Like you look at the passing accuracy stats, it went from 66% up to 84%. If you compare the first half to the second half, that sloppiness in the first half is just kind of so unbecoming of Liverpool, and probably the environment is one of the explaining reasons for it. But of course, when you have someone like Luis Diaz to bring in, it's going to make your team a lot better. Jurgen Klopp went all Jay-Z after the game and was like, we had 11 problems in the first half. He didn't want to pin it down on Diogo Jota per se. And he also said that he went to one of his coaches and said, find me one good clip from that first half so we can show it to the lads at halftime to give them some confidence. And he said, we have no clips. And that was one of the interesting bits from last night. Like I didn't really realise that Klopp uses video analysis at halftime in the dressing room, or that coaches do it full stop. So that's
I assume it's quick fire, one or two things. Here's an obvious error that we have made, go fix it. Or here's something that we're doing that's working time and time again, just do it again. There's no point having about 3 analysts in the stadium and about 4 more sitting at home doing all this work if you're not going to use it.
Yeah, I suppose I guess it's a fair point.
They're using it in like junior C football matches now.
Yeah, but I would have thought it was in
Come
the
on, you don't think Liverpool think like a multi-billion-dollar enterprise at half-time, or like here's a little video clip?
But I thought it was just all in the aftermath of the game, really.
The Kerry footballers are doing it.
Yeah, I just thought it was all in the aftermath of the game. I just like at half-time, it's like, what are you going to achieve? What are you going to achieve at half-time in the game when you got like 15 minutes and people are wrecked?
I mean,
Mayo 2006 were the last team not to do it. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
If only we'd had someone going, big guy up front. Turns out they've started the big guy at full forward. Maybe we should
oh, Jesus, the ghosts.
I think it was obviously the intensity that Villarreal brought. Like Liverpool should have been expecting it. There's no way Villarreal were just going to roll over at home in a European semi-final. But maybe because they were don't want to say so poor last week, but offered so little going forward that Liverpool thought it'd be a similar type of game. But Villarreal were at them, and it was a game that didn't suit Thiago, the speed. They were just running by him.
Let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about that. Because Thiago is the best footballer in the world, according to the my Liverpool feed, the feed of Liverpool fans over the last 3 months. Like, untouchable. Perhaps the best midfielder. I don't know. I can't actually remember anybody as good. Pirlo in the World Cup in 06 is the only comparison.
You see, now what you're trying to do here is to build it up so much that when it doesn't happen... That's
what Liverpool fans have been telling me. Like, best footballer in the world territory last couple of months. Salah, excellent, but really the change that is going to sweep the quadruple for them has been...
So you don't think
the ascension of Thiago to the high planes of like an echelon that he looks down on the rest of humanity. He is Jesus being tempted by Satan at the top of Mount Tibidabo. Look down here. You can have all this, Jesus. All you've got to do is take this forbidden fruit. Thiago took the forbidden fruit and he owns everything. So what happened to him last night? How is it that like a team of Premier League misfits could send him so off his game that he's passing the ball to the touchline like it's in the Phoenix Park?
Well, how is it that a team of Premier League misfits managed to get themselves all the way to a Champions League semi-final?
Well, that's a different question. Answer my question.
Good management.
Yeah.
It's an area he struggles with. I thought in the game against Manchester City, where in one way he was the player who dragged Liverpool back into it. You saw both sides of him. First Manchester City opportunity for Raheem Sterling, Kevin De Bruyne just strolls past him. That when he's on the back foot, when players are running at him, like that's not the strong part of his game. The strong part of his game when he gets on the ball. So I think he didn't have a split second. They just ran at him. Defensively, he wasn't able to keep up with it. And he looked a bit rattled. Like some of those passes he played in the first half were so out of character, like basic stuff for a player of Thiago's calibre. And maybe there's something that other teams will have seen there with Liverpool last night that they can get at. Like the entire midfield unit, Keita had a complete nightmare in the first half. I'm always surprised when I see a Liverpool 11 for a game of this magnitude and Henderson isn't starting. He is the man on nights like that. He is the one who sets the tone, who gets a grip of things, who makes sure that there's no sloppiness. So for Keita, who does seem to be first choice for the European games, and like the decisions that Klopp now has for a Champions League final in terms of centre back, centre midfield, and which of the three start up front are huge. But that was as poor as Liverpool have played all season in that first 45. And Thiago, Keita, Andy Robertson, who again, the last few weeks, everyone's been raving about his form. Like that first goal, needs to be more aware, needs to get out in front. Trent didn't cover himself in glory for the second goal either. So it was a bad 45 minutes. But the thing that Klopp will look at, I think, is been able to turn around to that bench and know he has several players now who can come on and who can change the course of a game.
Of the players who started for Liverpool last night, do you want to guess who had the best passing accuracy?
Van Dijk.
Thiago. 84.3% according to Who Scored. So this was just like a first half problem that got remedied in the second half. And also when you look at the guy passing out of play, that just is like, oh, he's completely off his game, when actually there are just the more extraordinary moments. And also in the first half, it kind of felt like they could have used Thiago more. They could have gone through Thiago a lot more when they were just playing these balls over the top. And it was like these balls, I'm not sure, were they just constantly overhitting them? Was the Villarreal line too high and they're not used to coming up against a high line? I'm not sure what it was. But I thought they could have gone through midfield more in the first half. And the stats at the end showed that Thiago actually really, when it comes to passing accuracy, which is the thing that you're criticising him for.
Well, like Thiago's always going to be pretty close to the top because the vast majority of his passes are the simple little 5-yard passes. It's
sideways.
But no, like Alisson and the centre back should be top of the passing accuracy. Like they're the most sideways passes.
Do you know this from other previous matches?
No, but I think it's the. Listen, I don't want to say it's the Joe Allen effect, but it's the
he's the Spanish Joe Allen. Is that what you're saying about Thiago?
No, I think is
that what I just heard? He's the Spanish Joe Allen.
That's not your headline.
That's the headline. At Nathan Murph, he's the Spanish Joe Allen.
Joe Allen looked like he was the Welsh Thiago at one stage of his career, but it never quite went that way, unfortunately, for Joe.
Okay, I think we could get sidetracked down a Thiago-sized hole. He was there was somebody. Anyway, It's too early in the morning.
Listen, you can also, you need to be obviously looking at teams and picking holes and all that, but they are back in another Champions League final, a third Champions League final in 5 years. Which is pretty insane.
I'd love to have seen last night's performance against Bayern to see what would have happened. We were talking about the team are 7th in the league.
But maybe it never happens against Bayern. Maybe it never happens
because there's no complacency.
There's no complacency.
So there was a bit of complacency at 2-0, and I think that's probably understandable. Like there's big games. It's like this one's going to be easy enough for us. And just the way the team was changed and everybody was like he was able to rest players at the weekend. It's a really difficult balancing act. And they managed to come through it. I think that's really all that matters. John Wayne on acid is the YouTube user. I hope you're only microdosing as opposed to dropping full tabs, John. He's wondering, was the slippy pitch the reason for Thiago being terrible? I would have thought the slippy pitch would have elevated Thiago's skill set even higher and made him stand out. Maybe I never.
Maybe
understand.
The heaviness meant that his radar is slightly off, that the ball isn't travelling the way he quite expects.
Yeah, I always thought that like bad conditions would elevate the best players' skill sets, but there's the other argument that it's the great equaliser in terms of bringing mediocre players up to good players. Virgil van Dijk is the best centre-back of all time, says Michael Eoin. I've never seen anyone else like him. This was on BT Sport last night. It wasn't his best performance last night though, was it? Virgil was not good.
No, it's an interesting time to make that take. Like I presume there's a lot of people who'll go along with that. Full stop. He's definitely the best in the world at the moment, and I think obviously he's come back so well from that injury because there were definitely a lot of questions I thought at the start of the season about his that yard of pace that maybe he had lost when you were judging him by best defender in the world standard. And I think he's got himself back to that level. So that's been one of the reasons why Liverpool have gone on this run now, and they're going to play every possible game this season, which is the first time an English team have done that. So being fit, having a fully fit squad is something that Jurgen Klopp has definitely needed. For me, one of the most interesting things after the game was Mo Salah coming out saying, I want to play Real Madrid. If you're asking me personally, I want to play Real Madrid. And like we had this a bit of a debate last week about, is like what danger would Real Madrid pose compared to Manchester City? Of course, Manchester City are a better team, but there is just something about this Real Madrid team that would make anybody nervous, I think, especially with the manager that they have and some of the players that they have and the maturity of that squad. And I think after what Salah's saying there, I kind of want to see this now. Like, I mean, we've got some fantastic Manchester City-Liverpool games already this season, and yes, they're the two best teams in Europe, and yes, everybody will probably want that final. I kind of want to see Salah against Real Madrid again. Granted, there will be no Sergio Ramos this time, and that's really the revenge mission that he's personally after. That's his personal crusade. But I think this Liverpool team against Ancelotti, I think that'd be a good matchup.
It was a brilliant interview with Salah after the game. He's incredibly honest. He was asked several questions that you presumed any footballer just after a Champions League semi-final would say nothing. Even when he was asked, would you prefer Manchester City or Real Madrid? The obvious stock answer is, I don't really care at this stage. But he was definite that it was Real Madrid he wanted to play. And you can understand, from Mo Salah's point of view, revenge has to be a huge factor for him. When you think of the impact that the arm injury had on him at that stage when, at that time we thought it was the peak of his powers. It turns out he got even better. But he will feel that cost him a Champions League and him maybe being the best player in the world even back then. So maybe there's a little bit which I thought he was going to say, which would be even more honest, that we've seen what Manchester City are like and they're a much better team than Real Madrid. So obviously we don't want to face them. But he was asked straight afterwards as to the amount of goals he scored, 30 goals, 15 assists, was sort of rubbing it into Trent Alexander-Arnold, how he wouldn't be happy that he now has more assists this season. Then said, actually, assists don't matter that much. It's all about scoring goals. And he was asked by Jake Humphrey, what do you set a goal at the start of the season? Again, you expect, but wouldn't say 40 goals. 40 goals is what I thought at the start of the season. I've got 30, so I've got a little bit to go.
Will he get 10 goals in the final month of the season?
I think if he gets 10 goals in the final month of the season, Liverpool will probably win everything.
Liverpool's average pass accuracy over the course of the 34 matches played in the Premier League is 85%. So that's the whole team's average, which means that obviously loads of players have to be over that average. So Thiago was at 85% last night, was he? Was that your figure?
I think so, yeah, or just below it.
Well, in the first half, they dropped to what last night? Was it 66%, 67%?
66 up to, and then 84 in the second. So even in the second half, they were below their season average. They went pitch.
Thiago's average over the course of the season is 89%.
There you go.
So 4% off his average. Not that bad. It's just more pronounced, the errors in a bigger game. He's racking up those stats against your Villas, your
Manchester City's.
Did he do it against Manchester City in the first game?
In the first game, no, but I think in the second game he was. I remember him playing in the first game. In the second game, he was a very different player.
The cup game. Are you talking about the cup game?
No, I'm talking about the league game.
Right.
The 2-2 where it was his ball that really dragged Liverpool back into it when City were rampant in the early stages of that game.
No, you're right. He's the best player in the world. You're right. It's true.
I'm not saying he's the best player in the world, and I wouldn't have been sure 2-3 months ago if he'd be in Liverpool's starting 11 for a Champions League final, whereas I think now he is absolutely nailed on. I would be interested to see what Liverpool fans think Klopp should do for the Champions League final, because it has felt all season that Matip has been the number one and has arguably been Liverpool's best centre-back all season. But Konate has been starting all the European games. So for a Champions League final, do you stick with Konate? Do you bring Matip back in?
No, you bring Matip
surely
back
Henderson.
in. Yeah.
Surely after Keita's performance last night, Henderson has to start.
All right.
In the Champions League final.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Liverpool fans, pick the team for us. Mark Lawrenson is going to join us in about 5 minutes' time. We'll get him to pick the team for the Champions League final as well, assuming everybody is fit. Bournemouth were promoted last night, which means that we're going to have a Premier League goalkeeper next season who hasn't been close to the Ireland team, really. But
he started one massive game and it went badly wrong against Serbia.
Since then.
Seen since.
Yeah, hasn't been close to it, you would say. Like, nobody's talking about him versus the other two. But if he's playing week in, week out next year in the Premier League, which, maybe they'll replace him, who knows, in the summer, or hopefully they won't. Seems like they don't need to, and he's got a good relationship with the manager. He's got to come back into the reckoning, right?
Absolutely. I think this conversation around Bazunu Kelleher is far too set in stone. It's totally out of Stephen Kenny's control. Even what happens next season. So Gavin Bazunu, player of the season at Portsmouth, comes back to Manchester City. To Manchester City, have they seen enough to say, actually, we want you to stay here and be second choice, be third choice? Maybe we'll finally get rid of Scott Carson and you can be the other guy with Zach Stefan and Ederson. And suddenly Gavin Bazunu spends a year not playing any football. Or maybe he goes and plays championship. He's at a higher level again. Likewise, Caoimhín Kelleher. And if Mark Travers has 6 months of good quality first-team football in the Premier League, and if Bazunu isn't playing, and if Kelleher isn't playing, it's going to be very hard for Stephen Kenny not to reward that.
Yeah. And what about Nathan Collins? Is he in our team at the moment?
Well, he's probably put himself in a position where he's next in line. Like the back three at the moment. We see Doherty's injured, so Coleman you'd expect to go back to right wing back, which opens up a space alongside Duffy and Egan.
And Duffy's not playing.
I would say Nathan Collins Duffy will still play for Ireland during the summer. Now there's 4 matches, so he's going to end up doing a little bit of rotation. But I think at the moment Nathan Collins has probably stepped ahead of Darragh O'Shea just with O'Shea's injury. So I think your back three would be Collins, Duffy, Egan with Coleman at right wing back. But think about 3 years' time, if all were to go according to plan, and you have
Andrew O'Malley, Nathan Collins,
Darragh O'Shea, Nathan Collins is your back
Virgil
three.
van Dijk and Rio Ferdinand playing for the Republic of Ireland, according to
all rolled into one.
Yeah, no, the two of them, 1-on-1. Yeah, it'd be amazing. So he's Ireland's Virgil van Dijk, says Pat Dolan. We take that. We would take on the range of outcomes of Nathan Collins' career at the moment. We're like, yeah, you could be Virgil van Dijk. We take that.
Yeah. We'll cash in on that one.
Him and Rio together. That's a World Cup winning team right there. And maybe the Euros. Maybe not the World Cup. We don't need to be too greedy.
Has Michael Eoin even seen Nathan Collins play yet?
Exactly. Tweet him there, at Michael Eoin. The other big news over the last 24 hours or so is that Shamrock Rovers may be on the hunt for a new manager. This seems to have come out of left field, Nathan. I was completely unaware that Stephen Bradley was on the market for teams like Lincoln City. So Lincoln City have been linked with him. They have sought permission. What's the latest on this?
I think that's where it is, that it seems conversations are ongoing between Lincoln and Stephen Bradley, and the timing has caught everybody off guard, but it's probably caught everyone off guard because Irish football runs a summer season, whereas actually if you're Lincoln, now is the perfect time. Michael Appleton has gone as manager. They finished 17th in League One, and they want a manager who can come in and dictate their transfer policy and get in ahead of pre-season training, get a full pre-season ahead of the start of the season. It seems their football director spends a lot of time in Ireland looking at players, has obviously seen a lot of Shamrock Rovers and likes what he sees with Stephen Bradley. And while initially you would look at this and think Shamrock Rovers going for a third straight league title, heading in towards Champions League football this season, building something really good out in Tala, why would you leave? But it's just a reminder of where Ireland is in the footballing pyramid, that he would be going to Lincoln. I think you could say an unfashionable team, certainly as we would see it, who get a far bigger attendance to every game, up at 9,000. His wage budget would be transformed, over 5 million a year. His own personal salary, I'd imagine, would be transformed. And his own reputation, if he was to achieve something at Lincoln, would also be transformed compared to what he could do at Shamrock Rovers, unless they went on a run in Europe, which, there's really no guarantees. So on the outside, it seems like a complete shock, and it could well be an absolute shock to the system, to Shamrock Rovers ahead of their biggest week of the season, where they've 3 home games in a row over the next 7 days, finishing up with Derry City in Tala on Friday week, and they're 3 points behind Tala. This could really shake up what happens in the Premier Division this season. But from Stephen Bradley's point of view, and reports are that Stephen McPhail and Glenn Cronin could also be in the mix to leave as well, it's a bit of a no-brainer, because unfortunately, there's no football industry for coaches really in this country. So if Stephen Bradley, if this week were to go badly wrong, if Europe doesn't go well during the summer, and if he ends up leaving Shamrock Rovers at the end of the season, where do you go now? Where do you go? Like, the next job is maybe a part-time job, whereas actually go to Lincoln, and Lincoln last season got to the playoff final, get promoted to Championship. Suddenly you're in that industry where you constantly have a job.
Who would replace him at Rovers? The lads were speculating about potentially Robbie Keane. Is that realistic?
Well, he's very well connected at the club, and he's volunteered at the club at underage system. And when you look around the board and various people behind the scenes, he would have a lot of links there. So he is a huge name. Remember, they're in a very different position to where they were when Stephen Bradley came in and at the end of 2015, where Rovers hadn't won the league for 5 years. So Dundalk were the dominant team. They tried to do something different and did it brilliantly by bringing in a young management team. Bradley was early 30s at that stage. McPhail had just been retired. And they went with the academy system, brought in a lot of young players. Now they're the big dogs. Now they are the champions back to back. So do you look for a different type of manager? Do you want that big name who can elevate the club in different ways? And Robbie Keane is most certainly that. He's obviously on the lookout for a job. Keen against stuff is something everybody can sign up for. If you were to look inside the league, there's probably no real options there at the moment, unless they were to go for Keith Long and all his experience with Bohemians. They've obviously dipped into Bows quite a few times for players over the last few years. But Rory Higgins isn't going to leave Derry with their billionaire owner back at his hometown club, top of the league. Then they've
Vinnie Perth.
Somebody. Well, I was just going to say, if you're looking for people just outside, like Vinnie, I'm sure would feel that he should be in the mix. League winner with Dundalk. He was a local boy
from Tala. I think it's a big deal.
Played with Rovers. He's a regular. Anytime I'm out in Tala, you see Vinny there sitting in the posh seats in Tala. So I'm sure he's got some connections there as well. The other names, internally, and maybe in the short term, Stephen Robinson, who's running the academy, Graham Gartland has been doing some work with us. Maybe they're potentially in the running. But Stephen Rice is one of the more interesting names who keeps coming up over the last 24 hours. So Stephen Rice is currently Stephen Kenny's chief scout and opposition analyst. He replaced Rory Higgins. He is really highly rated, has a great history at Rovers, was their captain, scored the goal at White Hart Lane, knows the academy, coached the 17s and 19s. He would probably be, alongside Robbie Keane, the favourite, but that would mean Stephen Kenny potentially losing another member of his backroom staff. And, I don't know if you saw in the last 48 hours, John Eustace, his new assistant coach, has been strongly linked with a move back to England and potentially a full-time job with Queen's Park Rangers or another side in the Championship. So there's a few little things in the mix, but definitely in terms of where the season was going for Shamrock Rovers, it shakes things up completely.
It spices,
if he goes.
It spices
Maybe Stephen McPhail stays and decides not to move with him, and Stephen McPhail gets the job.
All right. We'll keep a close eye on that in the coming 24 hours or so. We'd hope for that to be wrapped up. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. I'd like to say Mark Lawrenson is with us to talk about Liverpool last night. Mark, at half-time, what was your level of concern about what the outcome was going to be?
Oh, not much. Because I think it was a monumental effort by Villarreal in the first half. And you knew eventually they would run out of steam. And also, you get a half-time and Klopp gets in amongst the players and sorts everything out. So, no, I wasn't unduly bothered, to be honest with you. And Liverpool against any team will always score and always make a host of chances. And in the end, could have won even more comfortably.
Is there anything in the template that Villarreal showed last night for other teams to try and emulate? There's very few games left, granted. We're getting to the end of the season, and there's a lot of tape where those long diagonal balls over the fullbacks' heads. Villa did it in the crazy game last year, but teams don't seem to go for it too often. and it doesn't seem to work too often, but it was working last night in the first half.
In the first half, yeah, it absolutely totally was, and with the crowd behind them, and obviously the pitch was a little bit wet as well, and slowed the game down a little bit, which helped Villarreal. But it's really, really difficult because of this Liverpool press. I mean, we didn't really see it in the first half, which is most unusual. But once that gets going, it's really difficult for opposition players. I mean, we saw in the first leg against Villarreal in midfield, they never got a chance to get their head up, any of their midfield players, and they've got one or two decent players because Liverpool were pressing, and it's like a swarm of bees against you. You can't sort of get up and look and think, oh, I'll pass it through to there because they're on you. They didn't do that first half. So it's possible. I mean, City have been, obviously, Manchester City have been really, really competitive against them in that particular way where they've kept the ball against them. But, you're talking about the two best teams in world football in terms of club football. So I can see City doing it in the final, obviously, if they get through. I couldn't see Madrid doing it, but they've got other qualities, obviously.
Mo Salah was pretty... Sorry, Nathan, go on, fire away.
Sorry, it was just on the half-time and the potential changes. Obviously, everybody is raving about Luis Diaz and his introduction, and there was almost reassurance of having Henderson and Diaz and so much depth on the bench.
Yeah.
But if everyone knew Diaz was going to make that sort of a difference, should he not be in the starting 11?
Well, he keeps changing it, doesn't he? So I don't think he has a worry about stuff like that. And it just wasn't a day for Jota, which was eminently obvious to everybody. And, he's come on and been outstanding. And I think the thing with Diaz as well is it gives them this width and this pace. And all of a sudden he stretched the game out. And, and then Liverpool they've got a little bit more room in midfield. Villarreal, the press that they had in the first half obviously was on the wane because, as I said, that monumental effort they put in the first half. So it wasn't inspired. It was just a good tactical change. And to be honest with you, in the first half, he could probably have changed 7 or 8 of the outfield players. I heard you talking about Thiago and everything. I mean, that's probably the worst he's played for ages, and even he couldn't pass to a red shirt as well. So, look, over the 2 games, if you split them into 4 halves, I mean, Liverpool have been outstanding in 3 of them, and they were absolutely average in one of them. But against a team like Villarreal, it was enough to get through.
When Klopp goes with that front 3, why doesn't he play Mane through the middle and Jota on the left?
Why doesn't he?
Yeah, given Mane's been so good in the central position when Diaz has been on the pitch recently.
Probably because he thinks he doesn't need to. Look, I mean, nobody knows better than him because he sees these players day in, day out. I think, if you're thinking about the final now and you think that everybody's fit, he'll play Mane through the middle, and he'll play Salah on the right, and he'll play Diaz on the left. So. And Jota obviously come on because Jota, as we know, can come on and get you a goal, and he goes into great positions unlike any of the other 4 or 5 forwards as well. So, and I heard you talking before about and Henderson would play for me. I mean, Keita just cannot be consistent, and that's a problem for him. And sometimes the game passes him by. And I think the other thing with Henderson is when he plays there, he's good with Trent because obviously Trent just bombs on all the time, and Henderson will sit in when Trent goes past him. So, and I would play Matip. As good as Konaté's been in Europe, I would play Matip because he gives you something a little bit extra.
Okay, so does this matter who they're playing in the final? If it's City or if it's Real Madrid, does it matter for you picking that team?
Yeah. Well, you just pick your best team. You just pick your best team, and Matip's in my best team. And the thing about Matip is great relationship with Van Dijk, but he'll come out and he'll break the ranks and come through with the ball, and he will commit opposition players, which is, if you're a midfield player in that team, is fab because it gives you a little bit more space. And
yeah.
That's Liverpool's best team, and why go to the Champions League final, why would you not pick your best team? So
just for clarity's sake, Konaté is out, Matip is in, Keita's out, Henderson's in, and Jota's out, and Diaz starts?
Yeah, absolutely, all day long.
And that's a team to beat either Real Madrid or Man City. So we were talking earlier about Salah saying he wants Real Madrid in the final. That's what he wants. I can see why. I think that's like I would want Real Madrid as well. It's just easier. It's better. It's not the all English final. It's like
Salah also wants $400,000 a week, but he's not going to get it. But look, I mean,
he might.
I mean, he might. I mean, man's going to cause ructions if he does. But I would rather play. Real Madrid than the Manchester City. Manchester City knows so much about Liverpool, and vice versa, and that would be a real kind of tactical battle. I don't think it would be a great game either. Well, finals generally aren't anyway, are they? Because the fear of losing. But Madrid can only play one way, and I know you're going to throw, Benzema at me, and quite rightly so, best striker in the world at the moment, unbelievable run that he's had. But you can get at Real Madrid. I do not fancy them defensively at all, and this Liverpool team tend to score against anybody at any level. And I think you'd probably get a better game between Real Madrid and Liverpool. And I'm not being disrespectful to City. It's just the fact two English teams who know each other, inside out, and what will happen on the day. And I would be happy with Madrid. And of course, there's a little bit of history, 1981, Alan Kennedy, and all that kind of stuff as well in Paris. So that would be ideal for Liverpool, I feel.
Go ahead.
I mean, the quality of the performance in the second half, obviously, maybe a little bit makes us forget about what happened in the first half. We were putting down to a bit of complacency. Is that or no? No, I just think Villarreal were outstanding in the first half. It was honestly superhuman effort from them. And it was their cup final, but unfortunately for them, it was their cup final in 45 minutes. And the conditions weren't great. That's not an excuse because Villarreal played in the conditions, but they out Liverpool basically in the first half. Unfortunately, the game's 90 minutes. You have a half time, you can sit down and have a think and change the thing around, which is what Klopp did. And Diaz coming in just made the pitch so much bigger for Liverpool and got them a little bit of space, and then they could start passing, because the pass in the first half was hopeless. The two fullbacks were guilty of with the two goals of ball watching. It was Liverpool at the worst, but at least, like any good team, they parked that at half time and went, right, we start again. And they won comfortably. But by the way, of all Champions League goalkeepers I've seen, and Karius included, what about the fella in the goal for Villarreal, Rui? I mean, everything went through his legs. He doesn't look like a goalkeeper, and he was all over the place, which certainly helped Liverpool. Karius included is the worst thing any Liverpool fan can say. That's the harshest. That's.
Well, Karius was hopeless, wasn't he?
Yes.
Karius.
Put the Miley.
God love him, but Karius is the worst player that Klopp's ever signed, and he's the only one that he failed to improve. And it was a gamble, complete gamble, and it just didn't come off. And when he turns up with his brand new G thingy Mercedes, whatever it is, with a big K and an R on the front, or whatever his initials are. LK or something, I don't know. You're in trouble after 2 weeks of signing him.
What's going to happen tonight?
Good one. I think I somehow fancy that City will win, because Madrid will score. We know they'll score, don't we? But they'll leave themselves a little bit open, and I just think City will get through. I would have been more convinced City getting through if it had been 4-2, which really, in that fab game the other week, it was, at 4-2, City just should have shut up shop and go, right, there's no more goals happening here, and 2-goal lead would have made all the difference. But no, I see City getting through, unless of course, Mr. Guardiola decides to do something left field, which is done sometimes with overthinking teams.
Is that it? Is that like the extent of your concern? Is there not anything that you saw last night about, going to Spain, and let's not forget going up against the Spanish champions this time at the Bernabeu? Like, is there not something within Real Madrid's control tonight to actually take this thing to at least extra time?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'm not being disrespectful to them, but City along with Liverpool, the best two teams in the world, and they've walked La Liga, Real Madrid, but they don't come up against these two teams very, very often. And I know they scored 3 at the Etihad, etc. But no, City are a top team. And they will make loads of chances in this game. And along the way, I just think they're better than Real Madrid. And I think when we talk about Liverpool pressing, City will press tonight and press with the ball as well.
In terms of something left field, like maybe even dropping Gabriel Jesus would be left field at this stage because his form is so good. Are City a better team when Jesus starts, when they have that focal point rather than the false nine that he sometimes likes to go with?
No. I think in or out doesn't make any difference. They're just unbelievably talented players that they've got, and I think we all made the mistake at the start of the season. They've not signed a striker. They've not done this. They've not done that. And, it looks like they might win the league. They might win the Champions League. No, they're just an unbelievable top team. He's had a good run, Jesus, but I'm still a little bit with him. Can you really count on him in the big games? I'm not sure yet, even so. And I think the manager's exactly that way with him. I mean, he's obviously having a run now because he's in a great run of form. So hopefully he plays and scores. But you never know with Pep.
Can we go back to the 400 grand a week for Salah? The impact that would have on the rest of the changing room. Is that the reason why the contract hasn't been signed, do you think?
Yeah, well, they don't want to give him that much money, do they? And that's understandable because you've got whatever you are, whatever the football club is, you've got to balance the book. So if they go and give him 400 grand a week, well, who's the first to knock at the door? Well, it's probably Van Dijk. And then it's Mane as well. I mean, Van Dijk's contract's not up, but he'll be thinking, hold on a minute. So he'll be knocking on the door. And Mane, obviously, because he's the next one in terms of the contracts. And it's just it's like a can of worms. And I know they made him a really, really good offer, but obviously Mo thinks it's not good enough. And I think one of the things is that I think he's pointed to look at Grealish at Manchester City, look at the money that he's on, and he's not even in the team, but that doesn't really matter. But him and his agent will obviously use that in terms of negotiation, won't they?
I don't know how much Grealish is on. Is it around about 400 grand a week? Is that what the feeling is?
Well, I don't know how much, but I think he's on more than Mo's on at the moment.
Right.
So, Mo and his agents are in there saying, Grealish is on this, and, my man's not on that, and he needs to have this because he's the best player in the world. And again, voted best player in the country, all those kind of things. So they'll be giving it the full lot, won't they?
Grealish is on, according to Marca, 360 grand a week in euros. Second highest paid player in this Manchester City dressing room after Kevin De Bruyne, who's on 420.
Right.
That's just amazing.
There you go.
That's probably a combination of extortionate wages and also probably rating Jack Grealish higher in that dressing room than he really is. He's not the second best player in that dressing room.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's as far as Mo and his agents are concerned, he's on the money, isn't he?
If you're Liverpool, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, I think you've got to be quite sort of hard with it and say, look, this is it. This is our final offer, and just see what happens. I mean, if they say no, it doesn't mean it's the end of it, does it? So it's not like he's going to say, oh well, I'm off straight away. So, but they've got there's a duty to the football club that you can't just keep giving unbelievable contracts to people, and we know what a fabulous player he's been, and I think this has been his best season because he's also this season been very creative, in assists, etc. as well, and I think just more of a team player than he's ever been. But they've got to balance the books. They're building a brand new stand as well, another 6,000, etc. And they've done a good job, the Americans, but you can't. They'll probably feel that they're being held to ransom if he wants 400 grand a week because, as I say, it's a real problem. And one thing you don't want unrest in the dressing room where players are looking around at Mo's salary and doesn't score one day, and it's like, well, what are you doing for all your money? And I should be on this. And you know what football dressing rooms can be like. So
well, it ruined Manchester United. Yeah. They completely screwed up when they gave Alexis Sanchez far more money than everybody else, and he really wasn't worth it. And they haven't recovered from that.
Listen, worse than that, what about Arsenal? With Ozil and the fella who went to Barcelona in the end. Yeah. So, you'd think after Ozil, Arsenal wouldn't have made that same mistake again. So, but football clubs do it, don't they? Oh, just that one extra player is this, is that, the other, and
yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, does the impact that Diaz has made change Liverpool's outlook as well? And maybe not even Diaz, but from a year ago, Jota's arrival, whereas the front three was set in stone. Who was the backup? Whereas Diaz has made more of an impression in the first 6 months than any of the other three made in the first 6 months of their time. That actually they have options.
Oh yeah, absolutely they have. But they don't want to lose Salah because he's 20 odd goals, and just as I say, the way he's been playing this season as well. And if you've got 5, why don't you keep 5? It doesn't matter about Origi because Origi's gone anyway. But Origi every time he starts for Liverpool is basically not very good. Comes on as a sub occasionally and will score for you. But that apart, there's not a great deal about him. So he's obviously going to walk out the doors as well. But no, I mean Diaz has been fab. Well, and Jota, they've both been fab. And Diaz is reminds me of Suarez in many, many ways in his attitude, and he's tough. All the Colombians are tough, but he's since day one when he came on as a sub. I mean, that the mob at Anfield completely took to him straight away, and the fellow doesn't even speak any English, and apparently the lads are like giving him some words to learn. But you can imagine what they're giving him, can't you? Well, you can't you? I mean, it's like, right, okay. Yeah.
If anybody wants to text us in a list, we might not read them out.
I think they probably, instead of saying hello, the word they probably said, when you meet someone, just say F something, something, something. That's what they do. That's the kind of the way dressing rooms are.
Mark, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Mark Lawrenson giving us his thoughts there. Some quick comments. James Duffy says, we kicked up a few gears in the second half. We needed to. Strong bench proving vital. Stephen says, Madrid will allow Liverpool play out from the back. City won't. They will press immediately. And Jessica Hannon says, if we play City in the Champions League final, Henderson cannot start, Nathan. He offered nothing going forward or defensively in the Etihad and simply doesn't have the pace for it anymore. If it's Madrid, then possibly.
I think Mark summed it up. I think it's the protection he gives to Alexander-Arnold as much as anything is why you want to start Henderson. It does feel as though a lot more goes through Liverpool's midfield when Thiago and Keita are there, whereas they can be a bit more direct if it's Henderson. And for Liverpool, I wouldn't be afraid of building your team around getting the best out of Alexander-Arnold, and of having Matip and Henderson there, which I think it does assist that.
Canada good, Matip better at the moment.
Yeah, as I said, Matip has probably been better than Van Dijk this season, and the way he just strides forward and can skip through a couple of challenges opens things up for Alexander-Arnold as well. So the two of them in the Champions League final, definitely. All
right, Nathan, good stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is 13 minutes past 8. Keith Wood is up talking rugby next, but make sure you stay tuned in the ad break. It's the latest clip from our latest episode of the Koi Gig podcast. Rihanna Jarrett was talking to Kathleen McNamee and Pearl Slattery about her decision to move away from the WSL to the Championship side, London City Lionesses. The Koi Gig pod on OTB Sports is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Marginal gains, XG, top speed, recovery, what's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
You've talked a lot about your move from Brighton to London City Lionesses, and the whole point being trying to get more game time. And I know that was a little bit hampered by the fact that you have been injured for the last couple of months. But prior to that, how were you feeling in your own game, and how were you feeling having made that move? Was it one that you were happy with and you were feeling quite content about where you were growing?
I think it was definitely a positive move for me. As I said, the key thing was that I needed to be in an environment where I was not only playing week in, week out, but I was also being challenged. And I think it was definitely have that in terms of the team that we have here. And although I enjoyed my time in the WSL, it just wasn't for me. And sitting on the bench for kind of 18 months had its toll on me. And I think you could see that in terms of my performances, not only in an international jersey, but at club level as well. And I think for me last summer, it was important that I thought about what was best for me. And I do think that kind of the turn of the year, coming into January, I was slowly starting to find my feet. I was slowly starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, slowly starting to get back to the type of player, kind of the movements that I was doing in the Women's National League before I signed, and kind of remembering what I was all about as a player. And I think I kind of lost my identity a little bit over the course of those 18 months when I wasn't playing so regularly. And I think for me it was tough to kind of like realise that and have those tough conversations with managers and kind of accept that, and not only accept it but figure out how I was going to kind of get out of that situation.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
This is Sport Ireland Campus. And here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 17 minutes past 8. Keith Wood is with us. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Good morning.
It's the week of big European games. Unfortunately for Munster, the game's not in Thomond. I wonder, is it an issue anymore? Is it something people are talking about locally? Is it disappointing or does it matter?
I think all of those now, without sitting on the fence, I think people are a little bit peeved it's not there. Decisions made a long time ago on both sides, both from picking for a concert, which they do need to do and have consistently done, and then the changes within the structure of European rugby have made this become a situation. So I think that makes it a bit awkward. I think people would like to be in Thomond Park, would like to see the game there, would like to have that huge fill-up in their lives. We're still trying to come to terms with post-COVID idea. So I think a lot of people would rather be in the ground. Having said that, they don't mind travel up the M7 to Dublin, to the Aviva, especially when they're not playing Leinster, because that hasn't gone very well for them as of late. But look, I think they look at the game as the reason they support Munster, and the players will look at it as for the reason that they play rugby, actually, because now we're in cup rugby.
I know as well there's been a bit of criticism about the fact that the ground hasn't been sold out very often, but it's always a chicken and egg thing. The success brings fans and fans help the success to bed in, but the team has to bring the success first. I know you're supposed to support through thick and thin, but like at the same time, there is definitely an element of casual fans who come aboard the bandwagon, and the core support is always going to be there, but the core support isn't big enough to fill every stadium all the time. And so it's occasions like this where you get you win back the hearts and minds of the ones who are wavering a little bit, and that's why it's actually quite an important hinge point for the team, for the club, for the franchise, or however you want to talk about the Munster identity.
Yeah, look, of course it is. And I think if I don't get jumping up and down as much as people that have been maybe criticising the not full stadia. I think we've had a very strange couple of years, and I don't think it's just down to fickle fans. And yes, you're supposed to stick with the team in the downside, but you can't accuse the Munster supporters of not sticking with Munster for the last 10 years when they haven't won trophies. So I don't think that's the case. I think it's as much to do with with COVID, I think it's much to do with increasing in prices and costs and everything else that's going around. And I think that's part and parcel of it. I think you'll see a huge amount of people going up. I think you might get in the region of 40,000 at this game, which would be unbelievable. I think there's over 32 or 3,000 tickets sold already. So I think it'll be an unbelievable occasion for it. When you're looking to see whether everything, and I know when we talk in the media, we flare things up a lot and kind of overtalk some of them at times. But I think the requirement for Munster on this game is to show how they have changed over the last number of years, that when they get to this level of the competition against one of the big boys coming back, and they've had success against Toulouse only a couple of years ago in Thomond Park, are they able to play at the level that is required, and are they going to go quiet like they have done in the last couple of years now, albeit against very big teams like Saracens and Leinster? And so I think that's what we want to see, actually, is there a huge change in performance, or does it revert under pressure? So the wish is that it'll be a mixture of actually what we've seen for the last few weeks. I mean, I still want a bit of pragmatism, so you're not kind of throwing everything out, but I think there has been some green shoots over the last few weeks, albeit against teams who haven't been at the top of their game. It looks like Toulouse are on the way back. They've leapfrogged La Rochelle over the weekend. They're in a position where they're used to being, which is competing at the end of the season, and they seem to time their run incredibly well.
I know you were on commentary for the game last year in Thomond between Toulouse and Munster. Was that down to game plan, the way that game finished up, the second half in particular, or was it down to just the gulf in quality between these two teams?
Both, actually. The gulf in quality is, if you're looking at Toulouse, it's a team of unbelievable riches and capability and size. And for me, in that game last year, it was the size that counted at the end, and the lack of taking of a couple of opportunities. And so I think you need to make more opportunities and take more of them if you're playing and trying to play against a team like this. I don't think you can sit back at any stage and hope to ride it out in terms of fitness. Because dealing with some of the size of these guys for a consistent period of time, I think that puts chinks into the energy levels. Like, Munster's defence this year has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And in the last couple of weeks, they've started attacking more. Now, against Ulster, and I haven't spoken since that, but against Ulster, they played against a team that it was like a team with a burst tyre. They had lost. They ran out of all energy. Ulster did, and yet Munster barely won at the end. You can't sit back at any stage at all. But if you're given space, Munster will attack. But I'm not so certain they'll get a huge amount of space against Toulouse.
What team do you pick? That's the other fundamental question here, and it seems to be around specifically the number 9. We talked with Quinny about it yesterday. He was like, you get extra physicality and extra defence, and this is going to be a game where that's important, given the sheer physical size of Toulouse. But equally, if you're going to be the one who is doing the attacking, and if you're going to be the one trying to inflict your game, then maybe you start with Craig Casey and you start with this unpredictability, and he's the agent of chaos that you need to bring to the party for them to go, well, what are we doing here? How do we defend this?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I'm caught myself on it. Strangely, as Craig has started to, I think, rise his standards this year, which he has definitely, and I think he seemed to be back playing to the way he was when he joined the squad a couple of years ago, which was at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I think he needs to play his style and not slow it down style. But I do think Munster will kick quite a lot in this game. And I do think they'll try and manoeuvre their way into the game and trust their defence a lot. And it's whether they pick Conor for that. I think Conor has actually played really well this year. I just think he's come back into far better form. So it's a great position to be in, to have two very different types of scrum halves. I could see them starting with Conor and having Craig getting a decent amount of time, like 30 minutes, to try and burn out any of those big forwards sort of after 10 minutes in the second half. I could see that happening, definitely. It's hard to figure out which is the right way to do it, for Munster. I think if Munster had been playing with more attacking intent for the whole year, I think in that situation, I think you may then go and say you'd start with Craig. I just don't know. It's quite hard to figure out what they're going to actually do, because when Munster play well against a team, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pick the same team afterwards. That hasn't been this case this year. But look, I'd like to see them play and attack a bit more. But I still think it's trying to get the balance of that right. And I don't know that. It's almost not trusting it, but against Ulster in particular, they were given space. They were given space to attack. There were space to change angles behind the gain line.
But Toulouse did give space to Ulster over the two legs. Similarly, there's a bit of easy-oziness around Toulouse, who kind of are so good that they're like, look, we'll catch you in the end, don't worry about it. And I think the thing to do is start with Craig Casey. I think the thing that'll happen is Van Graan is conservative, and he's going to start with what he knows is very, very strong, absolutely, as you say, back in form. Number 9 has played for the Lions and has reached that level where he's been captain material for the Lions, and so that's why I think he's going to pick Conor Murray to start. Personally, I go with Craig Casey and bring Murray off the bench to seal the game, but that's why he's getting paid the big bucks.
Yeah, well, look, I think Munster in this game, it's quarter-final, and it's happened more recently in semi-finals. But I would do, as you were saying, I would attack full bore. I think Munster need to show that they're making a progression, that it doesn't revert back to slowing the game down and kicking the ball from the 22 to the halfway line. I think they need to be able to trust their skills, and it's whether their skills are then good enough or not, and that becomes part of the issue that they have. But I think there's been too many semi-finals in particular where Munster they've turned up for the game and they've continued to play that style that they play, and it keeps you very close. But ultimately, it's led to losses. So that cycle has to break at some stage, and I think it would be disheartening for Munster if they don't show a lot more of what they've showed in the last few weeks. They don't show that when the pressure comes on. I think that'll be the mark of conservatism then at that stage when you look at it. But having said all that, I'm not negative looking into this game at all. I think Munster have shown shoots. I think there's been a few injuries which has hampered them a little bit in the last few weeks. I'm not talking about the long-term ones. I'm talking Ty Byrne in particular. It's great to see the possibility of Conway coming back. But there seems to be a little bit more jaunt to their step in the last few weeks. So let's see how much of that is real and see whether it's able to stand up to Toulouse.
Do you start Conway, or is Mike Haley playing well enough at the moment? You think, actually, you know what, Conway's going to be on the bench, which means that I have real strength and depth there if anything bad happens?
Yeah, I would start Conway, absolutely. I think he has been... he had a bit of a dip last year, but this year he's been absolutely fantastic. I don't know the nature of the injury. I don't know to how close he is to being right, but he's only going to be in the squad if he's fit. So I would play him and say, go out there and play as hard as you possibly can, and when you burn yourself out, we'll take you off.
And do you start him at fullback? Because Zebo, I think it has this X factor, and
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think Zebo has given a bit of a spark back, and he is a very, very natural footballer. And I think there's an excitement factor with him as well. But there's an excitement factor with Conway too. Different, but Conway seems to be more lethal at the moment. But I don't know. It's look, that's why the coaches have to pick the teams. It's kind of fun when you look at it. Like I look at Zebo and he doesn't look. He often doesn't look like he cares, but he cares very deeply. That's just that sort of laconic nature of his. But he really cares, and he wants to have a bit of fun. And I think if we're to be honest, we could always do with a bit of fun in the team. So look, there's difficult decisions, which is the right place you want to be. No,
it's the team is not picking itself straightforward because of injuries. It's like there's a bit of strength and depth there, and that's the thing that will give Munster fans hope. You sound like you're hopeful of a victory.
Well, I am hopeful of a victory, and the point you make about Toulouse being as if their class will out at the end, the only thing I'd hold against that at the moment is they're now coming to the business end of the season, and with all their internationals back, there's a lot of players who won a Grand Slam this year. There is a lot of drive in that team. They beat La Rochelle last week, but you'd expect them to win at home. I think this is not as daunting for them because it's in the Aviva. I think Toulouse are the favourites for it, which is a hard place when Munster supposedly playing at home. But I do think Toulouse are the favourites for it, and I think their strength will more likely hold out in the end. But if the green shoots that we've seen over the last few weeks are real, if under pressure they are given, they manage to build on that sense of confidence, well then this is a victory that Munster can get.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Leinster, who are favourites despite the fact they're going to Leicester, and they've clearly got screwed over as we all knew they would be when the COVID situation happened. Everybody else got a free pass except Leinster, and unfortunately they're reaping the rewards of it now by having to go to Leicester. They've managed their squad really well. Lancaster stayed in Dublin with the team while Leo took the B team down to South Africa, and there were some incredible performances, so the future is pretty bright for them. In the present, the Ireland team that will take the field against Leicester, is it strong enough to be able to go and win away from home against a really in-form Leicester team who appear to be getting back to the old Leicester style of being one of the best teams in Europe?
Yeah, look, Leicester are totally transformed. Steve Borthwick has done an incredible job. He only took over whatever it was in the middle of last year, at the end of last year. He's brought some decent signings in with it, but some of their players have been playing fantastic. They're also benefiting strangely from George Ford not being involved in the England setup for elements of it, and not playing a huge number of games because he's pulling all the strings. A lot of those players are leaving, and that's interesting as well for them, because these are clubs that have brought a lot of players back or brought them to a higher level. Ellis Genge in particular, who has been phenomenal this year. But they're leaving at the end of the year. So when that happens, will they want to leave with a couple of trophies? And I think they're in a very good position for the Premiership, even though it becomes knockout at the end, which is difficult. Again, a lot of Leicester's, I'm not saying success, because the success at the start of the year was fantastic, but they had a bit of a blip and now they're back again, but built on the back of Bristol Bears last week, who they beat by 30 points. Bristol were abject and have decided that they're not tackling anymore this season. That's what it seems like. But Leicester fully put them to the sword and play well, play an exciting style, and are becoming incredibly exacting. And with all that said, and even in Welford Road, which used to be an incredible fortress, I remember winning there the first time, but Quins hadn't ever won there, and it was a horrible game, and it's a horrible place to play. And they're a really good baying crowd, kind of dismissive and great rugby crowd, but they'll slag you to bits. Led on by my father-in-law, who'll be shouting as loud as he possibly can against whoever's coming over there. It's a great place to go and play. It's a fortress this year, but that's not really for all of these players, is that enough to go against Leinster on fire? And I think Leinster will go with a great team. I think they'll go with no expectation, with an expectation of winning, of going and playing incredibly well. And from the comments that we've heard coming out of the camp this week, they've run themselves into the ground to be sharp. And it looks like that's what they want to do, is they want to run these guys and grind them down as hard as they can. It's going to be tough in the scrum time. I think the battle alone, watching Genge against Tadhg Furlong is going to be something. But I think Leinster have to go at this game thinking that they're going to go and win and then proving it every minute of it. And that's what they've done often in these big games. I think they look much stronger this year than they have for the last number of years. I think there's an awful lot of players playing very well. I think they'll have had a bit of a break, which they need, but they'll be hungry for it too on the same token. So I would expect Leinster to win, but it's kind of great to see Leicester back in it. They are a very serious European team, and they need to be at the top table for the competition to be at the top table. So it's kind of good to see them back.
When you say that they're impressing you more this year than in previous years because of form, is that it, or are there other factors at play? Is it just kind of the confluence of people being in the right vein of form at the right time? I look, in as much as Ireland have maybe a heightened Leinster system, I think Andy Farrell has made more changes to the back line, to the manner in which they play. I think they protect their 10 an awful lot more. I think if you were looking at a couple of years ago and you're saying your out halves were Johnny Sexton and Ross Byrne, you'd target them far more often, and they would tend to drift back a little bit deeper, and that's the place to put Leinster under pressure. Actually, now with the manner in which they're playing, there's an awful lot of different options. The players are protected more. They're not on the contact line. Other people are, a bit more robust individuals are able to take those passes and hits on the gain line rather than the 10s, and they look far more secure for it. But Josh van der Fleer is having a season of seasons. It's great to see Robbie Henshaw back looking, I think looking fresh again, and I think they've managed their players incredibly well. And I also think their strength in depth means that they can manage their players very well. And Leo Cullen and Lancaster have picked very different teams at different times because of looking after their players. And I think that's the joy of having a squad of the quality that they have.
It is the Ireland team playing Leicester this weekend. Like, we should expect to beat Leicester, right?
Absolutely. I don't think it. I think it's tough, and I think it's different. And I think that is a challenge in itself. And you say, well, sure, we're an international team. We should beat these guys. It doesn't necessarily just work like that.
Sure, it's a fight first.
But I would say, like the fear I have, strangely, the fear I have all the time now talking about rugby is the whether it gets decided by a red card.
Yeah.
Or 3 or 4 yellow cards or things like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
And that kind of throws every conversation you have into a little bit of a like what if, not that it matters, but like what if happens. And now I have to say I put that squarely on the players. The players need to tackle lower. They're the ones that are the red cards.
100%. But if the Connacht game had been a one leg and Gibson Park gets sent off, who knows what happens? It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that that game gets changed. Now, you'd still expect Leinster to come through, but I can see how against Leicester, if there's a red card for Leinster in the first 10 minutes, it's not going to be an easy win for them at all. I do want to just one last question, because I haven't talked to you in a while about the Munster backroom team. I totally understand Leamy, who everybody raves about when you talk to him about the impact that he's had at Leinster. Very young in his coaching career, so it's a big promotion, but it's good to get that DNA back into the club, and I understand that that's of some importance, but it's not the only thing. Prendergast's coaching CV, if they get him, is very impressive. So it seems like what they're doing is they're finding the best person that they can get who has a link and who understands what the requirements are, and then they're also getting somebody who has a very high ceiling. That's a good start. First off, do you know anything about this? Do you think they're the right guys? And do they need to do something else as well? Is there room for some other people to join that backroom team, or are you happy with the direction that's trending?
Would I be happy with the two of those guys? I'd be delighted with them, because I do think we need to try and promote, not necessarily from within, but people who've gone off to try and learn their trade elsewhere, and you know, they will have an emotional attachment to it. I think but I think they're only part of the story. So it depends exactly who else Rowntree's going to have and bring in, and partly whose decision that is. So I think you'd like to have for me, I'd like to have a senior, another senior coach of, look, I've said this time again, I love the manner in which New Zealand backs play. And if there was talks about Robertson for a huge amount of time, and I always thought that was unlikely, but I thought that would have been an unbelievable scalp to get. But you need to have a fairly big team. I think we've started getting there, but there's one or two more needed. And for me, it's to do with skill level and ambition, and how that's gone about it. And look, I'm critical of the manner in which Munster have been playing under that South African way, only for the reason I don't think it suits us necessarily. I think it puts too much pressure. We don't have huge men, and people can say Ahern is big. Well, he's tall, and he'll fill out more over time, but they're not these huge, giants of men. And I think that's a very difficult to play with that, unless you have a steady stream of them sitting on the bench as well. We may get one or two in a blue moon. So look, I think it has to be more natural skills based, and we need to heighten the sense of skill that happens all the time. So for me, I'd be looking for a New Zealand coach, and I think that's the right mix, someone senior, because it's about trying to build something that will last for a long period of time. And I look, for me, the best appointment has been Ian Costello, in terms of the academy and with the vision that he has. And he went away and he spent a fair bit of time in Wasps, and he's come back, and he has come back with ideas of what he wants to do for the future of the game in Munster, and for the players that are coming through the system. And, for too long, I think Munster have bemoaned how great Leinster's system is. Yeah. And now they're trying to do something about it, like a Munster solution maybe to a Munster problem. So it isn't exact, it can't be exact, and you can't be complaining about it. You just need to start doing things about it. And I think we're beginning to see evidence of that. All right. Not necessarily in the team that's been picked at the moment. That's the wrong idea. But in a lot of the structures that are happening behind the scenes now, it's a lot of changes to how the players are going to be developed.
Okay, we got to leave it there for now. Keith, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
It's Keith Wood giving his thoughts on the weekend's rugby, the Munster game live on Off the Ball and News Talk, a specially extended Saturday programme for you. And we'll have Brian O'Driscoll's thoughts, and we'll focus a little bit more on the Leinster game with Brian on Friday nights Off the Ball as well. At 8:43 this morning, though, Ronan Mullen is with us, jet lagged, and I hope you brought some of the nice little chocolates back from America. I don't like American chocolate. I don't know what I'm talking about. Ronan, how are you?
All good, Ger. All good.
How was it?
Yeah, I didn't really need the plane home. I probably could have sailed home on the adrenaline of Saturday night. It was unbelievable, and like we would have spoke in the preceding days, and the hype around it. Like, it's ironic. I think there was a tweet put up marking the anniversary of Mayweather versus Pacquiao, which obviously had this crazy build-up, and the fight was quite dull in the end, whereas somehow the Taylor-Serrano fight superseded that which went before. It was just an incredible spectacle in the ring, out of the ring, and what it's done for boxing at large, I don't think can be overstated. It was just a huge moment. So, in Madison Square Garden, when does the evening begin to take on that kind of sense of this is something unique and special and weirdly, as you said, actually beyond what we thought it could be? Yeah, well, like there's a slightly different culture in America in terms of ticket sales. So in this part of the world, if something's going to sell out, it would have sold out well in advance. Whereas even with the Canelo fight this weekend, and he's probably the biggest star in boxing, there's a bit of a walk-up element to it where it's going to sell out, but people leave it till the last minute. So we were told sort of midweek that it's tracking towards a sellout, and you have to take that with a pinch of salt because that it's in the promoter's best interest to make that suggestion. But ultimately, you just saw the crowd building on the night, and there was a huge Puerto Rican contingent, huge Irish contingent, and then the number rolled in. It was in excess of 19,000, and you're just thinking, sometimes you're desensitized to the Katie Taylor phenomenon because it is that, it's a phenomenon, and what she's done, in boxing on a worldwide scale and like on a secondary level to Irish boxing principally. But then you're walking around Times Square in the lead up to the fight and you see like her fight poster emblazoned up there, and then it's like, I was at a Katie Taylor fight in Madison Square Garden before, but she was supporting Anthony Joshua, and it was a slightly different dynamic, whereas this was all on the strength of this phenomenal fight. And it wasn't, it's not the kind of, I don't think it's an event that would have sold out if it was any sort of fight. This was like a top tier event from an athletic point of view, and you've got two of the top 3 fighters in the world going head to head, and you just so rarely get that in any sport really. So all that flux and those mesh of factors served up this unbelievable intrigue before the first bell, and then from the first bell it just took on a life of its own, and I think it'll be remembered. Like Boxing News magazine, which has been around forever, have released the front cover of their issue for this week, and Fight of the Century is the tagline on the front cover, so that speaks to how highly the kind of esteem this fight's been held in already.
Well, the great fights need that jeopardy where you don't know what's going to happen, or where you think you know what is happening and then it gets overturned by an incredible comeback. And that's, I think, why this is catapulted into the mainstream beyond the boxing fan, and people are going back and looking at it and going, oh yeah, okay, she was beaten. That like, she was over. This was it. It was done. And that's the bit that I think sucks people in, right?
Yeah, and like that uncertainty of outcome has been absent in Katie Taylor's career, essentially. Like there was a little bit, naturally just the gravity of the event for that London 2012 final, and it was obviously a very competitive bout in the end, but like there was a little bit of doubt around that. And then like in her entire professional career, like the comparable event was when she fought for the undisputed title against Delphine Persoon the first time, and she was a 7-1 on favourite. So like that was, it was a huge occasion, but she was like walking in there expected to win, whereas she went in here as a betting underdog against like a serial world champion and an absolute superstar in Amanda Serrano, who, is finally, fake it till you make it is too harsh on Amanda Serrano because she's a 7-time world champion, but she always carried herself with this air of like confidence, and had formerly been with Lou DiBella, like latterly now with Jake Paul, and she turned down the Katie Taylor fight a couple of times because she said she wasn't getting the money she deserved. And, boxing at a professional level is a commercial business, so the likes of Eddie Hearn have to leverage it up. They can only pay what if they're going to make some, incomings on their end. But she's like kind of saw what was possible here and like doubled or tripled her money ultimately. So like you had that side of the dynamic where Katie Taylor had this ideal dance partner from a commercial sense, but also in a boxing sense, because Amanda Serrano brought the very best out of Katie Taylor, and she left it all in there as well. I think the round 5, she saw this was her signature moment, her chance to seize it, and possibly gave Katie Taylor her best shot, and Taylor withstood it. And I think that was the psychological blow as much as anything, which steered it in Taylor's favour ultimately.
Did Amanda Serrano get swept away and the importance of the event more than Katie Taylor, I wonder? Like, just in terms of like what she was saying, right? She was the one speaking right before the first bell went. Now, in fairness, everybody probably gets more swept away in the magnitude of the event in the moment than Katie Taylor, given how composed she is. But I wonder, was that a factor?
Yeah, like we've spoken about Katie Taylor, the fanfare which tends to greet her events, and the Natasha Jonas fight at London 2012, which broke the decibel record at those games. And the final and all those events that I've mentioned, she's used to it. Whereas Serrano has like fought in club shows. She's defended her world title for $1,500. This was an absolute sea change from her perspective. And probably it's important to note that the Puerto Rican, like when they were arriving, the grand arrivals on the night, and their images were being displayed on the big screen, there was a huge turnout from the Puerto Rican fraternity. So Serrano probably felt a sense of pride in that regard, and definitely tapped into it, because I don't think she could perform any better. If there is a rematch, there'll be little tweaks, but I think she performed to her optimum level. But Taylor was just that little bit better in the end.
So, what do you do if you're managing Katie Taylor now? Do you get the rematch as fast as possible? We were having this debate yesterday in the show. Do you try and get a tomato can for Croke Park and cash in, or what do you do?
This is it. It was quite striking that the press conference after the event was delayed as compared to most, because it was such an attritional and damaging fight for both fighters, and that has to be taken into play. It's not like, in terms of a turnaround, if they were thinking of going in August, for example, they'd need to be starting training camp almost next month. I just don't think that's feasible. So that's when the October date was mooted yesterday, I think that's a lot more realistic for a Croke Park rematch. If you look at it from a Katie Taylor point of view, she could probably box me at Croke Park and sell it out. So she doesn't need this marquee matchup for that homecoming. It will just do amazing numbers regardless. From a Serrano point of view, she's still the featherweight champion. She obviously jumped up 2 weight classes to fight Taylor, and she wants to become the first undisputed featherweight champion from Puerto Rico, and she'll have to go back down to featherweight to do that. So, if I was from a Serrano point of view, I could see it's quite important for her to win her next fight, I think, to capitalise on this momentum. She doesn't want to be seen as a tandem with Katie Taylor. I think Serrano's built up enough credibility in the last couple of weeks where she could go and headline a show, or just be chief support to that Jake Paul bill, which will obviously do massive numbers in August. So from both points of view, I can see why they'd want to go separate paths and then possibly reunite in a year's time. But similarly, I think there's a sense that you could probably just build on the momentum of what was one of the greatest fights of all time. And some of those marquee matchups have sequels and trilogies, and the Gaddy Ward comparisons were quickly followed after the event, given the pattern of the fight. But similarly, the kinship that those two built after that first fight, and it was parlayed into the second and third. I think that could very easily happen with these two. So the fact that the money is where it's at as well, I think is a great thing. That's now a base level for these two, and there's no reason for them to dip below that. So you'd like to think they're going to be the tide that raises all boats in the women's boxing game as well.
How much did they make from the fight?
So Taylor made around $2 million, and Serrano was in the 7 figures as well. So compared to the number I was mentioning earlier for Serrano, it's a whole different ball game. And that's totally betting on herself. Many's a person would have taken that fight in Eddie Hearn's back garden 2 years ago behind closed doors, and you're relying on pay-per-view money. There's obviously no gate there, and Taylor was the A side in that fight, whereas she saw the value in it, and it's paid off in a big way.
Yeah, fair play.
You think that even without Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor could come close to filling Croke Park?
I was chatting to a few people about this. I don't think there's any question. I think she'd probably sell out Croke Park back-to-back nights, Ed Sheeran style, if she wanted to, because it's just such a marquee occasion, and it's
a big number of tickets. When you consider they sold 19,000 at Madison Square Garden, 19,000 in Croker would be an amazing achievement, but it's not going to look full.
I think she'd pack it out.
You think 80,000, 90,000?
Absolutely. Yeah. You think of I covered some of the Anthony Joshua fights at Wembley Stadium, and it's not necessarily a boxing crowd at those events, and I would say a large proportion of those that attend fights at Madison Square Garden would be the boxing at large, and then a small amount of the Irish American contingent and so on. Whereas I think you just have a huge pop culture tap in with a Katie Taylor fight here, and it would I think it would be a natural fit. And there was so much talk ahead of this that were they being too ambitious taking Taylor Serrano to the big room in Madison Square Garden? It's the first female bout of any hue to headline an event there, and they sold it out in the first go. So I think they have to be similarly ambitious. It possibly would be easier to just go to the 3 Arena or to a smaller venue than Croke Park for the Taylor homecoming, but I think with the power of Matchroom and Eddie Hearn and some of the...
I don't think the 3 Arena is going to work anymore as well. When it was the point, it was differently configured, so I'm not sure.
I mean, maybe 3 sides or something, is it?
Yeah, it's not quite the same. Well, it certainly wouldn't be the amazing in the round that you could have a croaker.
Like there are probably other outdoor venues where you could, build
maybe the Aviva
infrastructure for it, and
Carlisle grounds.
Exactly. But no, I just think it's an absolute shoe-in that, like, the reaction off the back of the fight at the weekend,
it is phenomenal.
So massive.
It is a cultural phenomenon. And the only other side to this is that Katie Taylor has climbed every single mountain there is, and she has her health, and it's boxing, and every single concussive punch from this point forward is damaging. So is there a possibility she just walks away at this stage and says, okay, I've done it all?
I think there's an argument to be made for that. I don't think she's the one making the argument. I think if you were to suggest that to her, she'd be aggrieved by it. But I think there's a huge amount of logic to it, because that was a hugely damaging fight, and I mean that in a practical sense, where she's taking clean headshots in that 5th round, and Serrano's actually without question the biggest puncher she would have been in with, amateur or pro, I would say. So, like if we are talking about a sequel and a third fight with those, it's going to be a similar pattern of fight. So, the commercial benefits of continuing are possibly too big, and the competitive spirit in her, like she's shown that she's still the top dog and number one. So it's difficult to walk away in that regard. And any time the retirement issue has been broached, she's kind of fobbed it off and said, I have a few more years in me yet. So Tom Brady style, I think it's a sort of kick the can down the road and hope she's going to be stopped asking that question.
Okay, so as a betting man, would you say her next fight will be in Ireland?
I think the practicalities of it are still, it's so fresh from like a month removed from there's just never going to be another professional boxing event in Ireland, was the sense, to, obviously what's happened in the interim, and this, like the fact that Eddie Hearn was volunteering that suggestion in the ring after the fight, and it was all Jake Paul and Amanda Serrano herself were talking about, let's go to Dublin.
Right.
So, like, I think that's a possibility. I think the more likely thing is if they could rematch at Madison Square Garden, and then Katie Taylor, as we were suggesting, could have a homecoming against a different opponent in a year's time.
Yeah,
and that might be more...
it's 50-50 if she beats Serrano in Dublin. What a letdown. It's 80,000 people in Croke Park streaming out after a defeat. It was like, oh man, that was...
But the other side of that, though, is that it's much higher than 50-50 in terms of packing it out and making this one of the best sporting events to ever happen on Irish soil if Serrano is the opponent.
Yeah, it's true.
That's true. Like, any doubt around packing out Croke Park would be dispelled by Serrano, because there would be a travelling contingent from
everywhere,
the American base. And yeah, I think there was a huge amount of people who would have wanted to be there on Saturday night, and it's going to be a lot more achievable if it's just up the road.
All right. Good stuff, Ronan. Thanks very much for that.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Ronan Mullen, giving us his thoughts on a historic night for boxing in Madison Square Garden on Sunday morning, our time. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. John Duggan's up next. Here's Billy Walsh talking with Joe last night, saying that Katie Taylor's hands are the fastest he's ever seen.
You said something earlier which stuck in my mind, caught my ear. Did you say Taylor has the fastest hand speed, male or female, that you've come across?
Yes, without doubt. Herself, I think Taylor was another really good. Clarissa Shields is up there, but I think without doubt, Katie has the greatest hand speed I've seen.
Right. Is that just God-given?
Well, I think we're born with a lot of things, and she was born with that, I think, and obviously there was nurture and around it as well throughout the years with her dad Pete training her, and then obviously in the high performance unit. But in general, her speed is what she was born with, and was a gift.
It's Billy Walsh last night speaking with Joe Malloy on the show. I suspect the lads would want to have Billy back on tonight because there's big breaking news in Irish boxing this morning. John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Yeah, good. Ger and Eoin, yourselves?
Yeah, good. We should be talking about the football and what's going on there, but unfortunately Irish boxing is on the back pages of the Irish Independent. Vincent Hogan has an exclusive this morning about Bernard Dunne.
Yeah, so he's resigned his position as High Performance Director of the Irish Athletic Boxing Association. It follows an apparent row that he's had with the body since the Tokyo Olympics. The intricacies of these things are always pretty complex, but Billy Walsh did leave in 2016 to go to the USA, and I thought at the time he was a huge loss to Irish boxing, and we didn't do too badly at Tokyo, and Bernard Dunne has now quit as well. So there doesn't seem to be any kind of shortage of infighting in Irish boxing. Whoever's the culpable partner in that environment, it's never seems to be a completely smooth environment.
Yeah, it's been consistent. People have come through the system, excelled, been in the background for our greatest ever Olympics, our second Olympic gold medalist in a decade, and they can't. The IABA can't seem to keep the good people in the system. So the one thing that's consistent throughout this is the IABA at the core of not being able to keep the good people in the system is the IABA.
And I'd like to speak to the IABA about that and ask them that question. And I never understood the Billy Walsh situation at the time. I remember Sport Ireland and their guys were looking to underwrite his salary, and whatever the personalities or whatever the reasons were, he was able to be let through the fingers of Irish boxing and go to do a great job with the USA. And Billy Walsh has been our most successful person involved in Irish boxing coaching. I remember at the time, I was so annoyed by it at the time that I called the whole thing a leprechaunism. So I don't know if this is another case of that, but at the time I was pretty angry about it. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the IABA and from Bernard Dunne in the coming days, hopefully, and we'll get to see what the sides of the stories are.
This row has been brewing for at least nearly a year at this stage. An unsigned anonymous SWOT analysis was done of Bernard Dunne's position and was circulated to the board of the IABA. Bernard got his hands on a copy of it and wrote a letter complaining to the IABA and has essentially not been able to do his job in the meantime. Kelly Harrington was at pains to point out that she was missing his influence in the aftermath of coming back from the Olympic Games as a gold medalist. He was obviously there for that, but certainly for all the build-up to that as well. But has not been doing his job since because of this nonsensical stuff in the background, where clearly he was very good at his job. Like his track record and his CV are second to none. He was involved with the Dublin footballers for ages. Jim Gavin, who obviously is a pretty good, true judge of characters and talent, backed Bernard to be part of that backroom team. And just listen to Paddy Andrews talk about him on the football pod. There's been certainly, you got a sense of him being a good person to be around. The boxers all thought the same thing, it seems, and backed him. And somebody who didn't put their name to it and didn't feel comfortable going public with it in the background was circulating this document, which undermined him and undermined his position. And now he's gone. And it's like, all right, back goes the circle again.
Well, you need people to look up to. Bernard Dunne is a world champion, so any young boxer getting involved in Irish boxing would look up to Bernard Dunne. They'd listen to him. They'd know he's walked the walk and talked the talk. So, and that's what Billy Walsh was. Went to Seoul, was a huge motivator and a winning coach with Katie Taylor and obviously all the lads in Beijing in 2008. So, letting these people through the system is the last thing you should be doing. That's the thing. Surely you can get to a position where somebody doesn't have to resign, as has been revealed this morning.
Sport Ireland were conducting an independent review of their governance, so I'm not sure if that was actually published in the end, but certainly Sport Ireland are going to have to stand in here again, constantly talking to IABA about their governance and how they run things. And I mean, maybe if boxing comes out of the Olympics, we'll stop caring about this, but it seems to be a very important sport.
It's our most important sport.
From an Irish perspective, it's our most medal sport. Yeah. And, you see how important Katie Taylor has been and Kelly Harrington have been for Irish sports. And, your leprechaunism is a good term. So, let's move on. What else are we talking about?
Well, like last night, I'm sure you've spoken quite a lot about it. There's 4 quarters in a 2-legged match. Villarreal played for 1 quarter. And Liverpool then were able to benefit the fact that they couldn't sustain it in the second half of that semi-final second leg at the Madrigal last night. So it was a 3-2 win on the night then and a 5-2 win overall for Liverpool. The quadruple is on. Paris, May 28th. How much would you spend, Liverpool fans, to go to the Champions League final? They were selling the tickets for 10 grand outside the Wanda Metropolitano in 2019 for the Liverpool Spurs game. And Andy Robertson is thrilled.
It's so hard to get to Champions League finals, especially the amount of good teams that are in this competition. And it's, to get to the final is an incredible feeling. It's going to be a special occasion. We're looking forward to it. We've got a lot of games from now to then, but our season's been extended, but for the right reasons, and we're so happy about it. And we can't wait to try and go and compete and try and make it number 7.
Good fella, isn't he?
Andy Robertson. In what way?
Just seems like a good fella.
Yeah, you go for a beer with him. You go for a beer with Andy Robertson. You go for a pint of tenants.
It'd be a long night. I get the impression that...
well, with me or just with him?
No, it'd be more than one. Stephen says Diaz has to play in the final. Jota just isn't in great form. Thomas O'Connell makes the point. Newcastle busted it gut for 90 minutes on Saturday and put it up to Liverpool, and Villarreal did it for 45 and scared the bejesus out of them. It shows you if teams just put in the same effort, they can give them a game. City destroyed Liverpool in the league. City should have won 10-2. Far better team, City. Sorry, I incorrectly read that. City destroyed Loserpool in the league, says Jay. Barry Manley says, great win last night, but to be honest, Rooney is a terrible goalkeeper. We were glad to get rid of him here in Real Sociedad, and he was at fault for at least 2 goals last night. This is true. Do Liverpool think Madrid is an easier task? It's a final. Anything can happen. Now, they don't think it's an easier task, but they want revenge. That's the whole point of that. Thiago and Diaz are overrated by the media, says S99BFOC8. Snappy. Good players, but not consistently great yet.
We need more commenters like Jay. We don't have enough people calling them Loserpool. We don't have people in our comments calling Ronaldo Penaldo and like saying cry more and stuff in our YouTube comments. It's not young enough, I don't think. But so welcome, Jay. Thanks for your comment.
Top 5 sporting fellas to go for a beer with. Something to think about.
I'd say Shane Lowry.
The classic.
Ronan O'Gara.
Yeah.
I'd say Roy Keane. If he's on the booze. He's on the booze, Roy Keane. Definitely. That'd be a good night. You'd end up with a fight at 4 o'clock in the morning, but that's good. That's what you want.
Great content for the next morning show.
It lets a bit of pressure out. He's like, what? I mean, you've never spoken to Peter Schmeichel ever since. He did name Pallister in his team of the Premier League, though, and they had a big fight. Like, he seems to think having a fight with somebody is a good thing.
So that's 3.
Okay.
Is Robertson in that 5?
Did you say Irish?
No, any person.
Oh, is it anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, well then it's like Pirlo and Zidane.
And then a far more interesting list, top 5 sports people you have been for a pint with.
Okay, no, that's
no, it's way more interesting. This is what people want to hear.
That's like real wankery. That's like, oh.
No, I mean people who you almost got into fights with or were outrageous or any of that sort of stuff. That's not risky territory at all.
Well, Sean Cronin once mistook me for Adrian Barry and was very angry about something that I had said about him. Well, actually, Adrian Barry was the guilty party in that one. Who are yours? It's all the Kerry footballers. Have you been out there on those nights when good stuff has happened?
There was one night. I'm very much waiting for the football pod to tell the story of what happened one of the nights in about 5 years ago at this point
in Coppers.
Yes.
Were you there?
I was there.
So you were an eyewitness?
I witnessed something extraordinary.
Right. Mayo versus Dublin.
No, it was Kerry versus Dublin.
Or were there not some Mayo lads knocking around?
There was some Mayo lads knocking around.
All right, so it was like a Royal Rumble, 3 on 3.
People at home would be like, ha ha ha, that's hilarious. But I wasn't a million miles away from...
Why don't you just tell the story and get the views for yourself?
Absolutely not, because that would be hugely...
You're handing this over
that would be hugely libelous to everybody who's involved, because the story only is good if you actually name the
But it's not libelous if it's true.
Literally, well...
anyway.
Let's not go down
The burden of proof lies...
Ronnie O'Sullivan says somebody else. Aina Carroll.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go for a beer with Ronnie.
Oof,
really?
That's a big snub.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just shows up and John is like, all right, see you later. Just pays for his pint, walks home after Ronnie sidles up beside him at the bar.
Ronnie probably got,
Ronnie.
I don't really like you or whatever, it's...
What's he ever done to you?
At least you'd know, though. There would be no fake me with him.
He'd tell you.
I'm having a good time or I'm not having a good time.
Yeah, and that's probably the risk I would want to take, to be honest.
Is that not good?
I want to be leaving with any sports star feeling like, well, they really enjoyed my company because I'm like, just this randomer.
Who's on your list, John?
I need to think about it.
Yeah, you like the way you just pitched it on me and you're like, nah, I've got nothing.
Well, that's because your producer said it in my ear. So Dalo would be somebody I'd, always would be good to go for a pint with, I think.
Yeah. Again, that runs the risk of being a multi-day. We end up at Cheltenham, even though there's no festival on.
Oh, classic. I think there's different types of this. Like there's like people you know. Who?
Cluxton?
No. There's people you'd know you'd have a good drink with, and there's people then you'd want to pick their brain, like Jim Gavin. You know, you'd have a steak with or whatever, and then pick his brain. It'd be more different kind of a night, you know.
Who's on your list, Eoin?
I'd also need to kind of think about this. Like, I mean, you've taken all the obvious ones, to be honest.
You were in school. Well, you were years ahead of Clifford, though, so you were never out.
I have interest in supporting people that aren't just Kerry footballers. You know.
You don't.
Like, I mean,
well, who you've actually been out with, though?
Oh no, I haven't been out with any sports people of note. Absolutely not. It'd be unprofessional, wouldn't it?
After road shows?
No, it's just after road shows.
Sometimes if you work with them, you know, you can have a drink and once a year or whatever.
Norman Whiteside does a thing where he explains his 1985 FA Cup final goal with the salt cellar and pints.
Brilliant.
He does it very well as well. It's very practiced.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
All right.
He was at a road show.
Okay, fair enough.
That was a late night.
Yeah.
Laura was out at that night, actually. That was good crack.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What does Laura drink?
Oh, good question. Beers. I'd want to say Carlsberg, but I could be wrong.
We could have just asked him earlier on. I wonder what he thinks of you on a night out.
Well, I'd say, like, he's like Ronnie O'Sullivan. God, that guy. Pothole. Go on.
Very good chance.
Anything else?
Yeah, so City 4-3 lead over Real tonight, 8 o'clock at the Bernabeu. Kevin De Bruyne says City will be viewed differently if they go all the way in Europe this season.
It would change the perspective from outside. I don't think, obviously as a player, you want to win the trophies and you want to win this one. But I think the fact that we've been fighting for it numerous years and being to the latter stages means that we've been doing really well. Obviously it's a cup competition and the quality is very high, so it's very, very difficult to win it. And there's different circumstances that happen. But you know, I think in the end, if you look back at the way we performed, or I performed with the team for 7 years, we did really well. But obviously we didn't win it, and I think win it would just change that little narrative.
Can't wait for this tonight, lads, in the Champions League semi-final second leg in Spain. Mark Travers will be playing in the Premier League next season with Bournemouth. They qualified automatically a 1-0 win over Nottingham Forest last night. So it's Forest, it's Luton, it's Huddersfield and Sheffield United at the moment occupying the 4 playoff spots with 1 round of fixtures to go. Clare beating Cork by 217 to 117 in the Munster Minor Hurling Championship last night. They'll play Tipperary in the final now. It's Limerick against Tip tonight in the Munster Under 20 hurling final at the Gaelic Grounds from 7:30. Longford, Wicklow and Offaly Laois in the Leinster Minor Football Championship from 7 this evening, guys. And Goran Park stages an 8-race card on the flat from 4:50.
Shifty Lad says Taylor should be Aviva or RDS. Croke Park is too big and the atmosphere will be lost because of its size. Wembley for Joshua is a soccer pitch size, not GAA pitch. Interesting perspective. I do, you know, would 50,000 be enough? It might. 50,000 might be like unbelievable. Like we're so Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua were the world heavyweight champions in England, which has a population 20 times our population, and they were able to sell that out after like massive hype campaigns. Would we be able to sell 80,000 for Katie Taylor? I think we shouldn't just shoe it in. I think it's more difficult than we think to sell tickets, particularly because the pricing, it's not going to be priced to bring your 3 kids. It's going to be priced for, like, would it be 100 quid minimum?
Oh, I'm not sure about minimum.
120? What's the cheapest ticket?
I'd say they would surely price where there would be 60 to 70 as your cheapest ticket. Sure, like it'd be a nosebleed, obviously, but like I mean, you're more than doubling it if you go for 50 from what her previous record would have been. I do think that Serrano would be quite an essential part of it if you're going straight to Croke Park, because for me the aftermath of this thing has just taken on a whole new lease of life compared to the build-up, and the reason why the aftermath has just been crazy is because of the quality of the fight itself. Things like Fight of the Century is the thing that would promote this next fight, and if you lose one half of that.
All right, any thoughts on that, John?
The homecoming, like about all these things, it's all about the purse, isn't it? And you know, you got to fulfil the purse, you got to fulfil the money, and it's balancing that with the fact that it is a homecoming, it is a professional bout in Dublin. And where does Katie want to? Where does she want to fight? I think it's probably the thing.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, she's a soccer player. Maybe the Aviva is something that she'd always dreamed of.
But Croke Park is Croke Park more Irish and more soulful? Is that a determination? But yeah, like an All-Ireland final ticket's €90, so maybe that should be the ceiling of it.
Yeah. All right, coming up, Phil Egan's going to be in to talk football. During the ads, keep an eye out for James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews getting excited about Derry's prospects this summer from the latest episode of the Football Pod. And if you would like to go for potentially a pint with the two lads, well then we're going to fix it for you. The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is hitting the road this summer. We want you to be there. No guarantee that they will meet you for pints afterwards, but play your cards right. Don't be a pothole. First stop is the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday the 2nd of June, where Paddy, James and Tommy will dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football as well as Championship 2022 in the usual Football Pod style. Plus you can expect a local legend or two to join the lads on stage. That's the Football Pod with Paddy and James in Castlebar on the 2nd of June. Tickets are on sale now. Go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and stay tuned to OTB for details on more shows to come.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
I actually wasn't too sure about this two-legged format, and I thought it was brilliant.
Munster legends Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
Bravery is there in the way they played. And what about Peter O'Mahony? I just thought
exceptional.
A sensational performance.
Yeah.
Jack O'Donoghue and Hodnett, the three of them in the back row.
That looks the most balanced back row that we've had all season.
The Red 78 with Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
The one game I actually would love to see now is Derry and Kerry. I just think it's such a different. They're so different that it could be a test, a real test for both sides.
Are you putting them you're putting them in the mix, Jimmy?
No, but I mean, like, the chances are now that there is a good chance of them getting quite far. Like, even if they're knocked out now, they won't be in the provisional qualifier then, will they? They'll be in the next round of the qualifier.
If they make the semi-finals, they'll...
there's definitely another scalp in them.
They'll be a handful. They'll be a handful for anyone.
If they make the provincial final, they're into round 2 of the qualifiers, where they'll miss, there'll be some tasty matchups in round 1. If they lose in the semi-finals, they'll be playing on the weekend of June 4th and 5th. And you can have repeat pairings, so you can't see Tyrone Derry again.
The tough side for them, though, Tommy, we're saying, is they play Monaghan next. So, it's a tough championship. They're on the more difficult side of the draw. Yes, Tyrone were really, really poor, but that puts Derry, like you say, we're talking about them now, as in these guys are serious contenders. It's a tough game for them against Monaghan the next day.
Yeah.
They'll need another big performance to get over that, because Monaghan are ticking along very nicely.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, if you want good quality sports audio in your earballs all day, just tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio. Here's what's coming up. Chris Waddle is OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Rihanna Jarrett is today's guest on Koi Gig. That was really interesting stuff from her, talking about her athletic identity. That's all in association with Cadbury's. Our retro panel at 4 o'clock is Sport and the Easter Rising. At 6 o'clock, OTB Gold is Paul McGrath, and the lads are back tonight from 7 with the show. And as I said, you can get it on OTB Sports Radio, and the best place to get that is the OTB Sports app. Now, Phil is in with us. Phil, 5 for a pint. This is an off-the-cuff idea that our producer had. Who would you like to go for a pint with in world sport?
I think Jurgen Klopp would be up there.
Thomas Kane says, Jurgen Klopp, lads, come on. I've seen him dancing and drinking pints.
Yeah, so that's going to be go crack. Other Premier League managers, I know he's no longer a Premier League manager, but I always think Sean Dyche would actually be go crack. There is the humour that you saw in some of his press conferences where he talked about playing lucky likeys in the pub. I mean, that could kill half an hour if you wanted to play that with Sean Dyche.
It would be insufferable, though, wouldn't it? Just stop
Half an hour.
We get the bit.
Yeah. Half an hour. That's all I'm asking.
Well, you're not really like, you say, we're offering you the whole world of sports stars, and you're like, I wouldn't mind killing in half an hour. It's like, this could be the best night of your life.
Yeah, I think obviously a boxer. The boxers always have the best stories. So there's a few in there that you could throw in there. Past champions, present champions. Golfer. Is there a golfer there? No.
I don't think so.
Shane Lowry would be.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
we did say Shane Lowry, yeah.
definitely,
But after that, I mean, somebody said Mickelson.
Oh my God, no.
I mean, Mickelson.
You'd spend the whole.
That would be fun, yeah.
You'd be drinking a lot of champagne.
Yeah.
Like you'd laugh at him.
Yeah.
For the evening, like you'd let him regale people with stories of Saudi Arabia being scary MFers.
David Bosang says 5 for a pint. Nick Popplewell, Lawrence Delalio, Ian Poulter, Brian Robson, and Big Phil Mickelson. Brian Robson also came out for drinks after a roadshow.
So
yeah, he'd be a good value.
Inside scoop on that.
He had beers and it didn't seem to have any impact whatsoever. It was like just an even keel. Thomas Kane, as I said, Jurgen Klopp. Owen Whelan says Tommy Walsh, Cha Fitzpatrick, Roy, and Fergie.
Yeah, a hurler. Definitely a hurler as well.
The hurlers are good crack.
Henry Shefflin, Brian Cody, first two.
I'm thinking the Offaly All-Ireland winning generation.
Yeah, we've been out for pints with them actually. They are good crack.
Definitely throw one of them in there as well. Yeah.
Owen Burke says it's all well and good saying teams should do what Villarreal did every week, but they know they can't keep it up for 90 minutes, just like Villarreal couldn't. Was that the fundamental flaw last night, Phil, or did they stop believing? Like, I know both Nathan and Laura were like, I wasn't that worried, but there must have been a bit of worry.
Well, okay, my honest feeling at half-time was it can't get any worse for Liverpool. And I expected Henderson and Diaz to come on at half-time. Diaz came on, changed the game. In fairness to Naby Keita, we saw last season he didn't even make the half-time against Real Madrid. Bit of a surprise to see him come out for the second half, but he was very good in the second half. And Klopp probably said, you know what, you've enough credit in the bank. You scored the winner for us at the weekend. Keita's been playing some good stuff in recent weeks, so I think that'll stand to him, the fact that he actually put in a good second half performance. That's what Klopp wants to see. He wants to see when the chips are down and you've been here before and we took you off before, but this time I'm going to back you, and he didn't let him down in the second half. I think Villarreal they ran out of steam, and I was surprised. Emery said after the first leg last week, this game is going to be different. He said it in the build-up as well in the pre-match press conference. Now, I did expect Villarreal to have more of a go. Now, I didn't expect them to just throw the kitchen sink at Liverpool in the first half. I thought they'd be more methodical, where they would think, let's treat this as two halves. Let's try and win each half by a goal, and then we've extra time. But they looked absolutely spent. You think of, if you're going 100 miles an hour, the worst thing you can do is stop, because they're sitting in the changing room for 15 minutes.
Cramping up.
And the legs are starting to lose a bit of life. Then they see Diaz coming on, and all he did when he came on was he got his foot in the ball, and it created time for other players, because in the first half they just couldn't get their foot in the ball. When they did, everything was rushed. Every misplaced pass just got the crowd up for it even more. And I can see what Klopp was trying to do in terms of protect Diogo Jota. Jota is a different type of player, obviously, to Diaz, and Liverpool have that with their front five. Obviously, Firmino was there, but he wasn't available. But he, like Diaz, is that kind of player that can just put the foot in the ball and slow things down. And then that just gives a bit of calmness to your teammates, and it also brings other players into play, whereas everything was so rushed in the first half. I thought Jota was a little bit like that away to Newcastle in the first half at the weekend, but he had a really good second half. He could start against Spurs and score 2 goals, because he's one of those, he's a bit like a machine when it comes to scoring goals, but they just didn't get opportunities to attack in the first half. So, no, I think it was a case of Villarreal were gassed for the second half and Liverpool just stepped it up. And they've had a few games this season where I thought if they get in at half-time, everything will be all right. The 2 City games spring to mind. It was 0-0 at Anfield at half-time, but City were on top, and I just thought if Liverpool get in, then they can fix the problems they have. And they actually led twice in the second half of that game. Then obviously you think of the game at the Etihad, 2-1 down at half-time. City are pushing for that third goal, and you think if they get it, then it's game over. Liverpool get in, they come out, score straight away in the second half. So they're very good at readjusting, and that's the problem with trying to beat Liverpool. You know, you need them to have an off day for 90 minutes, and it's rare that happens. I mean, you think back to the 2 league games they've lost this season, the West Ham game and the Leicester game. Leicester, they missed a penalty in that game and they missed chances. West Ham got ahead in that game and they were just dogged. So if Villarreal had scored a third goal last night, then, you know, the worry for Liverpool is Villarreal would have tried everything to slow the game down, whether it was lads going down, feigning injury, you know, taking time over set pieces. So it's, it's just another characteristic of this Liverpool team that they just don't know when they're beat.
Another different way for them to win.
Yeah, that's what they're doing at this time of the season. They're just finding ways to win. You know, they obviously put on a show against Manchester United. Then a few days later, they grinded out against Everton. You know, they were able to make changes against Newcastle at the weekend, and then, you know, you'd expect that's a tough game they have coming up now against Spurs at the weekend, but you just kind of feel that they're going to find a way to get the 3 points.
Tell me how many trophies they will finish the season with.
So they've won. I don't know. I think Chelsea have a bit of a. Their style doesn't really suit Liverpool, so I don't think that's a foregone conclusion.
No,
because
Chelsea are in free fall is the only thing.
They are, but I think they've won kicking them. You know, you kind of saw that the away leg against Real Madrid, that they could pull out a performance, and you know, Chelsea would be thinking that they should have beaten Liverpool in the League Cup final, and on another day, if Mason Mount puts a couple of those chances away, they could have. The Premier League, I still think City are in the driving seat just because they don't look like dropping points. I think if you ask me tomorrow morning, I'd have a more definitive answer on the Champions League. I think Liverpool would rather play Real Madrid, I think, in the final. Just all Premier League clashes are not usually good finals. You heard what Mo Salah said.
I think that the reason the Spurs game was so crap was because there was a month between.
Yeah, that's true.
Season. I think this is going to be totally different because the games between City and Liverpool. I heard what Laura said. He said he doesn't think it's going to be good, but I think that the games that between City and Liverpool have been amazing.
Yeah,
like it's at the level the Clasico was at when it was Mourinho versus Guardiola, where here's a team who everybody except Mourinho managed to win a Champions League with, versus the best team we've ever seen, and the Stars made the fights, and the Stars making the fights between these two as well.
Yeah. No, look, I think either way it's going to be a good final. Just given the way Liverpool play, you know, if it's Liverpool against Real Madrid, obviously there's the 2018 narrative. Last season to a lesser extent, and then if it's Liverpool Man City, it's the all Premier League clash. It's obviously the two of them going toe to toe in the Premier League, where you could have this strange situation where City could have wrapped up the Premier League title going into a game trying to win a trophy they're desperate to win, and Liverpool thinking we're going to avenge you taking the Premier League title off us, which is the one that we wanted. I think look, Liverpool have obviously won the Champions League 6 times, but they want to win the Premier League. They want to win that more, I think, than the Champions League, especially given how the title went a couple of seasons ago. They obviously won it, but they weren't there to lift the trophy with a crowd. They want that. So, to answer your question,
I would settle for a Champions League.
No, absolutely. I think
3 trophies, but not the league.
I think that'd be an unbelievable season. I think the fact that they're challenging for all of them is just this is what Liverpool fans dream of, where when Klopp took over, you know, this has exceeded expectation. It was all about, can he deliver a Premier League title? He's done that, but 3 Champions League finals in 5 seasons is phenomenal, and you know, there's a fair chance they could have a second Champions League title by the end of the month.
Glenn Boylan says it's crazy to think that Alisson had her last season to help us qualify for the Champions League. Here we are now in another final.
Yeah, that goal against West Brom, because there was a game where they obviously dropped points against Newcastle at Anfield, and everyone kind of felt that was it, done and dusted. But Yeah, to score a header against Big Sam, who's meant to be the expert on defending set pieces, and Alisson went up and scored it. And it was spoken about, a few people I saw mention it last night, where without that goal, there would be no Champions League campaign. So it's fine margins. And yeah, I think just the next few weeks is going to be nervous but exciting for Liverpool fans, because, you know, you want to be in it. If you're not in it, you can't win it. Mo Salah's interview on BT last night I thought was very forthright, and something you're not really used to seeing.
Specifically, which part of it? Because Nathan was talking about the same thing.
Yeah, just the goals, the targets that he sets. He actually said, usually I don't say this, but I'm going to tell you now, the 40 goals. And then obviously he'd no qualms in saying, yeah, I want to play Real Madrid.
The 40 goals, not getting the 40 goals, does that make Liverpool go, oh, you didn't hit your own target, so we're not going to pay you the 400 grand? You mean, you told us, we didn't know what your targets were, but you're not hitting your KPIs, so we're going to cut your salary.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's aiming for 40 goals just shows the level he's at. And, you know, it was interesting actually. Arsene Wenger was on BN Sports last night just talking about Mane and Salah, and just like the workload that they've had to get through the last few months. Obviously, both got to the final of AFCON, a final that went to penalties, you know, and Egypt had been in extra time a few times. Then they obviously met in that World Cup playoff as well. So think of, say, Salah. It's probably more evident in Salah, where like the emotional and physical drain that must have, where he obviously loves playing for his country. Like Egypt are dour to watch, but you know that's not Salah's fault. Like he's obviously trying to get them to World Cups and win AFCONs. But I wonder what kind of toll that's taken on him mentally, where, you know, he's not going to be going to the World Cup. He missed out on winning the AFCON. But
I mean, the fact he's not going to the World Cup means he's a great signing for anybody in the summer as well. So his market value is never going to be higher than it is this summer if Liverpool decide that they're not going to pay him the 400 grand a week he wants.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Salah left in the summer. I think a bit like what the reports coming out of Germany are like with Lewandowski. There might be no new deal, but they'll just leave it free the following summer. That could happen, and people say that's madness to let that happen with Salah. But if Liverpool think Salah is, maybe they see how next season goes and they keep offering him a new deal, and if he has an unbelievable season next season as well, they could say, yeah, we'll up the money. But I think one thing we've learned in the last few years, that if Salah was to go, Liverpool they'll be able to cope without him. The recruitment is that good. I mean, Diaz wasn't even meant to be signed in January. This was something that kind of came through last minute, and just what a signing he's been.
Like, I guess the other thing is, if he was to leave this summer, there would be a phenomenal amount of money coming in that they could then reinvest if they wanted to, or they don't have to reinvest immediately. They can wait a while and reinvest next Christmas and see what they need.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's the one player that if he was to go, they'd have to replace him straight away, because he's left-footed, because of that inverted winger that creates that space for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I would imagine Liverpool have a host of players lined up as replacements if it came to that. I don't think it will, though.
Have you changed your mind about relegation? Are Leeds going down now?
I'm very worried about Leeds now. Yeah, I think there's going to be twists and turns. Burnley, everyone just thinks because they're after taking 10 points from the last 12 game or 12
the mighty Villa stand between Burnley and
2 games. Yeah,
like it's going to be very interesting.
Even if they win one of those, then you know they're in with a chance. But look, we saw Leeds were on an unbeaten run of 5, and then you know they obviously got a hiding last weekend. But and Stuart Dallas is a big loss for them as well. Arsenal and Chelsea, the next 2 games, it's really what happens with the other teams around them. So if Leeds are in the bottom 3 going into those final 2 games against Brighton and Brentford, then yeah, you would fear for them. But Everton have just kind of adapted a Jose Mourinho style where they're just making themselves really hard to beat, but it's bloody effective. And Jordan Pickford was the hero for them on Sunday. So as I said to you, I always felt if Everton are going to get out of it, it's their home form, and that's the way it's playing out at the moment.
I do think that if Lampard manages to save them from here, being adaptable is actually a good thing for his managerial career. I also think that we probably underrate a little bit the job that he did when the transfer embargo was there, and he had no choice to sign players. That the group that he worked with and the young players that he brought through, he did very well with them. Like there's definitely he's a bit smug. He's slightly overrated by the English media as a player. He's very overrated by the English media as a manager, but he's not as bad on the other side of that. We might have gone a bit too far with criticism.
Well, we've a nice little collection possibly of former England midfielders in the Premier League next season, with Scott Parker bringing Bournemouth up, so you could have Parker, Gerrard and Lampard all managing in the Premier League next season. But
you fit them into one team?
No, I don't know. Like who plays out in the left?
Always a problem.
It's always been an issue. But yeah, I don't know where I stand on if he keeps them up, because some people would argue he shouldn't have them down this far. That when he took over, they weren't.
Bit of a shambles. Everybody injured.
Yeah, like the encouraging thing is the way they've dug in the last few weeks. As I said, one thing that has been quite evident in the last few weeks, especially those games at Goodison Park, is the Everton fans realise how serious the situation is, and they've got behind the team. Stay up, and then you can air your grievances after. You can say, look, this has been an absolute shambles. How did we get to this, where a few seasons ago they were talking about a new stadium and trying to play European football and trying to break. So you can do that after the season is over. It's now just a case of survive and deal with it after.
Yeah, paying the wrong characters too much money. It's the same story at Arsenal. It's the same story at Manchester United. It's the same story at Everton. It's the same story in every football club that has gone off the rails. Bad recruitment and paying too much for players who don't deserve the money. Phil, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. One last thing, sorry, Katie Taylor, where's she going to fight next?
I would still be leaning towards a rematch in New York.
And you think that's the best thing for a career?
I think it would be a great way to go out for Katie Taylor to fight at Croke Park, but I would prefer if it was against Serrano. I would prefer if it was
So fight Serrano and Croke, or if you're Brian Peters today, you get to play boxing manager.
Yeah.
What do you want?
I want Serrano, because...
You want Serrano where?
I want Serrano in Croke Park. I'm not mad about October, because I just know that it's not going to be a great night. Even if it's dry, it could be okay. But look, I know
it never rains in Ireland. It actually never rains in Dublin. Like, it's very, very dry here.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the bank holiday weekend just gone.
I mean, look, that's your recency bias is giving you incorrect information.
I mean, this is going to be the most boring topic of conversation ever on the show, which is saying something, but I have noticed it raining more often recently in Dublin than
the last couple of weeks. But
no, and then say compared to like 7-8 years ago, I do think that the last year has been particularly rainy.
And would you monitor this, or have you got stats to back
It's almost as if like the entire
where's your evidence for that?
Global climate is shifting and more extreme weathers.
Where's your evidence for that?
Is this like your past completion chart?
From here on out, yeah.
I mean, it's not like they don't keep stats for this, Eoin.
Yeah, but
I just said I feel it in my waters. Is that what you're telling me?
Literally.
Meteorologist.
My waters never lie.
Meteorologist Sheahan has finally unveiled his full. Look at me all the time. I was secretly.
2022 has been a rainy year. I can just feel it.
All right. Okay.
Statistically,
this is interesting. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. That's why they pay us the big money for the meteorological. You come for the sports information, and actually you end up getting half-baked opinions about the weather. We are brought to you each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. You can follow Off the Ball on all our social platforms. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the OTB Sports app to enjoy the latest and best in sports content and analysis. No mention of Dijk Furlong, says Cian Fahey. Brian Cody, we go crack for points, says Stephen. Kevin McManaman for the ballads, says somebody who just claims to be Celtic in our YouTube comments. It's interesting that the Celtic Football Club have, time of a morning to be commenting on our YouTube stream, but sure, look. Myself and Eoin back tomorrow. Aidan Fogarty is going to give us his thoughts on Handshake Gate. That's Taggy. Man City coach Jamie Carr. We have the second episode of Have You Seen? Joseph Conroy's sports documentary recommendation slot, and much more besides. To play you out, we're bringing you some Tommy Walsh and Billy Walsh chatting alongside Joe on last night's Off the Ball. Enjoy.
Listen, I was up there, Joe. I was in Salt Hill. First of all, during the game, before the game, as you're saying to the lads that are with me, this home and away, I think is fantastic especially for these close encounters where you don't know before the match who's going to win, who's going to lose, where it's going to hang in the balance. The atmosphere I thought was electric, and it seems to be the home support usually have the biggest crowd, and that was definitely the way it was again at the weekend. But leading up to the whole handshake, we say, the atmosphere was brilliant, and I think there'll be so many other stories probably we'll be talking about now only for that. And the handshake itself, like being there, right? I didn't see, the winning free, which was controversial as well. I didn't see that because I was still celebrating the goal, John Dunde's goal. Yeah. So we jumped up out of our seats just to fill in on the feelings for we'll say, I wasn't a neutral supporter, so that game was a Kilkenny supporter. So at the game, you're just exhilarated. Nothing beats a last-minute goal to win a match or to draw a match, especially when you felt maybe Galway were the better side in the closing stages. So it was just exhilaration from the supporters. We were up on our feet. Next minute, the quick puck out just went so fast. Next minute free. Your emotions are all over the place. So up steps Conor Cooney, ball over the bar. Galway win by 1 point. So you were just devastated, really. Frustrated as well at the free. I didn't see the free at the time live. I've seen it since highlights and that. But so you're wondering, was it a free? There's booze and this going out. But Brian was on the way over to remonstrate with Colin Lyons. So if you devastated, really, frustrated as well at the free. I didn't see the free at the time live. I've seen it since highlights and that. But so you're wondering, was it a free? There's booze and this going out. But Brian was on the way over to remonstrate with Colin Lyons. So if you can think, in that moment, he was going over it, I would imagine, this is all only me, furious, I'd say, to see what the free was for. Why did you call the free? Time was gone for the puck out. And then Henry kind of came in. It was an awkward situation probably for him as well. He had to go, look for the opposing manager and all that was going with it beforehand. So he called him, and Brian was kind of called back mid-stride. Yeah. And then there was the handshake, and we all seen what happened in the handshake. But, I'm not surprised. This often happens in a match. It's just the fact that it was the two of them, and so much went into the background behind that story. It's what makes such big headlines. But it has often happened to me in a match where you get last-minute goal, you get bet by, and someone tries to shake your hand, and you wouldn't mean anything by it, but you're not in that moment to say, hey, listen, I'm mad about you, I don't care about the results, this is great. You're in your own head nearly, just all these thoughts going through your head. So I can understand what happened. Then the slow motion. Slow motion, Joe, makes everything more dramatic. And it definitely wasn't as dramatic as that live being at the game. But listen, I'm sure Brian was furious at the time. Then Sir Henry comes over and the rest is history, I suppose. But I spent 13, 14 years in dressing rooms with the two of them men, and I couldn't say more about the two of them. Great characters. I've often been, on and off the field, maybe you make mistakes, the two of them would back you to the hill, Joe. This is over the course of 13, 14 seasons, not just one or two instances. So both Henry and Brian Cody, I couldn't say enough about their character. They handled it, divided it really basically, and just let's get on with it. Because I still, I wouldn't have the same, he's just said in the moment, Shefflin, and this is what separates, the great managers. And he was able to stay in the moment and say, this is bigger than me or the two of us. Let's move on here and not, make a thing out of it. Same with, scene out of it. And same with his interview after. I thought they handled it, divided it really basically, and just let's get on with it. Because I still will harbour back that this is in the moment, Joe. We all make so many mistakes. I don't know whether it's a mistake or not, but we all make so many maybe decisions that if you had more time to think about, you might make another decision, put it that way. And in that moment, I just not right. I rang my father on the way home, just for the crack. We live a laugh at this stage, and well, what do you think of that? And he was still up there. Himself and my mother were staying up that evening, and he wouldn't let anything be said about Cody, because he was saying my interpretation would have been kind of something similar. So only the cameras are in your face as well in the crowd. He kind of put, it was a brief handshake at first, and then it was pulled him back, and it was kind of what you'd say to a lad is you'd be close there, fecker, I'll get you in the Leinster final, something like that. more friendly-ish, but obviously it didn't happen like that, because I just think there's so much cameras in your face and that, so you could interpret it any way you want. But I suppose at the end of the day, listen, I think these things happen in sport because it's two great men. You're going to create a lot of news headlines around it. But
of course, yeah. So you'd have had a bark.
I don't think it'd ruin their friendship or anything. Go that way.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. You'd have a bark bite. You'd have had a bark back. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I'm not saying that because your lads will put this in a big headline on kitchen. I wouldn't, because I don't know how I would touch. I don't know. I would put it this way. You probably saw me hurling over the years, 10 years, and you can judge what my reaction would have been, I suppose.
I think he might have given his hand a tug back, actually, and pulled him in and said something, yeah. So you think they're okay as people? This is heat of the moment, we're at war, this is, okay, emotions get the better of me, but you don't think it's an underlying, ongoing cooling?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't think so, because when they were together, they were, as we spoke beforehand, they were best buddies, and one of them, was the man off the field, the other lad was the man on the field, and they would have been very close that way. So listen, I don't know what's been done between, say, the other day and now, but, I would imagine if they had a chat about it, and, like adults.
At least, and I'm delighted to say that a man who was a head coach of Team Ireland in 2012 when Katie Taylor won gold, and who has watched on across this most extraordinary decade of her career, gold in London, the low of Rio, to the high now of Madison Square Garden in front of nearly 20,000 spectators and many, many more watching around the world. Billy Walsh is with us, head coach of Team USA. Billy, great to have you on.
Thanks very much, Joe. It's a pleasure.
She was there already, of course, but she has just further, I think, cemented her status amongst the highest, absolute highest echelon of Irish sports people.
Without doubt, Joe, I think it's, I think we're running out of superlatives to say about this lady. Again, she's brought the sport to a different height with her performance on Saturday night. It was unbelievable. It was nerve-wracking. It had all the thrills and all the excitement that you would want in a fight. But she has so much guts and courage and desire and passion to win. It really came out in that fight, and she needed all of it to be successful.
Did you think she was going to win in advance?
I did. I thought I knew Serrano was a puncher and physical, but boxing-wise, Katie is the best in the world. Simple as that, as a boxer. Unfortunately, and she says it herself, she likes to get into the trenches now and again and get into a little bit of a battle. And she did that a little bit too much around the sixth round. Which doesn't really suit her. When she got back to her boxing, she was amazing after that fifth round when she seemed to be really in trouble and tired. When she came out the next couple of rounds, she got up on her toes and completely outboxed the girl and just seemed to get a renewed energy and new freshness coming out for those last 3-4 rounds.
When you were working very closely with her as an amateur, did she have a tendency to involve herself in scraps then and stand toe-to-toe then as well? Has that always been there?
It's always been a trait, fortunately or unfortunately. It's always been a trait, Her sparring partners in the high-performance unit were some of the best males in the world, which we're talking about Paddy Barnes and Michael Conlon. And those sparring sessions were like world title fights. As a coach sitting on the outside looking in, it was a joy to watch those guys and gals compete and train with each other and make each other the champions that they turned out to be. And I've seen her at a World Championships in the Bahamas, where she wasn't well that day. She had stomach trouble. She had a sore wrist, had taken Dijk. She was fighting Queenie Underwood from the USA. It was a big physical girl, and she was being thrown around like a rag doll in the last round, and Katie had been thrown on the ground a few times. And 20 seconds to go, she was 2 points down. And she got herself up when all things seemed to be lost and she had nothing left in her. When she found out, we told her she was 2 points down. In 20 seconds, she got up and exploded and non-stop punching to the final bell and won that fight and went on to win that world title as well.
And when you might say to her, stop getting involved in scraps, would she acknowledge, yeah, that's probably not the smartest thing to do, but then couldn't help herself? Or would she almost say, you know, very consciously and deliberately, no, I like doing that, I'm going to keep doing that?
Yeah, look, it's more so since she become professional, because when she was fighting as an amateur, she didn't go so much into it, only maybe in training and sparring, because of the 3 rounds, and you know, it was a short period of time, and obviously there was a plan in place against, you know, some of the best girls in the world she was fighting. But there was always that occasion where she would try to get locked in, and we'd have to pull her out of it and say, "Come on, get back to the tactics, get back to your boxing, and to what you're good at." But that's in her, you know. It's probably, without it, we probably wouldn't have Katie Taylor, you know. Yeah. And that makes her special.
It was quite noteworthy that between rounds 4 and 5, Serrano's coach, Maldonado, and at this stage, you know, Taylor had boxed very well the first 3 rounds, and, you know, her superior boxing skills were on show, and you thought, well, she's just going to outbox Serrano across the next 6 rounds. But between rounds 4 and 5, Maldonado, her coach, said to her in the corner of Taylor, she's getting hit harder than she's ever been hit. Just a bit more pressure and you've got her. So that was their sense coming out in round 5, and we saw just the punishment that Katie Taylor was taking. In your experience, Billy, I don't know, is it conditioning? I don't know, is it mentality? I don't know, is it something more of the soul? But in your experience, what allows a boxer to come through a round 5 type situation the way Taylor did?
Well, I think it's a combination of all of what you said. I think the piece, you know, the desire that she has to be the best in the world. I've never seen anybody, and I've trained quite a few champions and Olympians, and nobody I've ever seen that had the same desire as Katie Taylor to be the best in the world and to be the champion and to win. And that is definitely her ultimate ambition, never to lose. And so that desire, you know, you can't buy it, you can't train it. To go with it, then you've got the perfectionist that doesn't leave any stone unturned to have herself prepared to the best of ability, you know, to be able to go into those trenches at that time. And I did think she looked tired, but after that next round, she got in. She just seemed refreshed and a whole new sense of energy that came out, you know. And I think her belief in herself and her preparation definitely stands to that.
Because Ross Ename, her coach, was saying to her after round 5, you've just got to get back to the centre of the ring. That was his advice. You have to get back to the centre of the ring.
Yeah, I know. Look, I'm not really going to hear the comment on what her coaches do, but for me, you know, Katie's ability in boxing, her hand speed is the fastest in the world, male or female, and that's what she's very good at. So for me, you know, Katie should be fighting her fight as much as she can, and she would get less hardship. But if he felt at the time she needed to get back to the centre of the ring, well, that's all right. But the centre of the ring is where Serrano was, and she wanted to fight. And for me, that wasn't the best choice at that point in time.
As you said, though, she wins the final 3 rounds because you'd be forgiven if someone pressed pause during round 5. You'd be forgiven for thinking, as you said, Taylor's tired and she's just going to be almost hanging on for the rest of this fight. So it was extraordinary the way she won the last 3 rounds unanimously. Do you have any, I'm not even sure what the correct word is, I was going to say misgivings. Do you have any doubt over the decision that Taylor absolutely was the winner here?
Oh no, absolutely she wouldn't have fight. Yes, it was a close fight, but there's no doubt that she won the fight. And she outboxed her in the early rounds. She lost her way a bit, you know, 4th, 5th round, and then won the last 3 or 4 rounds by all the judges. You know, there's no doubt that she won the fight. But it was just the excitement of it, and it was close. You know, you go in a round and it still be close, but she won it. She was hitting her 2-3 punches, moving. Serrano was landing 1 shot. Taylor was hitting 2 or 3 punches, moving. Serrano was hitting 1 shot. So, you know, overall, at the end of the day, you're supposed to. Whoever hits the other person the most is the one that usually wins, right?
It does help.
It does help, yeah.
It was quite interesting. She was on a podcast in advance of this fight, an American podcast, and I'd missed this at the time. So she was saying that in the fights against Jennifer Han and the Sharapova fights, she was fighting with a torn calf. And this was maybe the reason her performances weren't as good. I think many of us looked on and wondered was just, time catching up with her. So apparently the calf was a bigger issue than we might have realised. And that was why it seems she wasn't sitting down between the early rounds either.
Yes, she's had that injury for a while and she was carrying it through those fights. And I suppose it's probably, the problem with professional boxing. You've booked a date, you got TV, you got the money coming in, you got to turn up and perform, right, no matter what's wrong with you. And sometimes to your own detriment. And unfortunately, she probably didn't perform to her best because she wasn't able to move to the same ability as what she's capable of, or what she did on Saturday night. She was able to get back up on her toes, and thankfully that calf seems to have been cleared up.
So that all suggests that, she's not running out of road here. She's more than ready for a rematch, and I don't know what her plans are. Everybody, the convenient thing to say is, well, she should just retire after the rematch and sail off into the sunset. But it does all suggest that it was an injury as opposed to time catching up on her.
Yeah, I know. But, I think for all of us, Father Time catches up eventually, but at the moment, it didn't. But for me, and thinking about Katie and obviously the long career that she's had, she's been 5 times world champion, which only happens every 2 years. So that's a 10-year period she dominated amateur boxing. She was 6 times European champion, which is also a 2-year period. And that was 12 years, So she's dominated boxing for a long, long time. She's been in boxing a long, long time. And for a lot of us that were close to her and had a small part to play in her career, we would all like to see her finish up pretty soon and sail into the sunset and enjoy the fruits of what she's done and live a happy life after it, because it is a tough game. There's lots of punches that you're taking and it isn't good for you. I don't know what people might say. But getting punched in the head isn't good for you, right? And I think, I would love to see her.
Don't know where you're gone, Billy. Your picture's frozen. I think the lads are trying to get you.
Lost it.
Oh, hang on.
There?
Hang on. I think you come back. You there?
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think we're lucky. I think a line has just behaved there. You were just talking about the punishment and I guess everybody wishes her long life and a healthy one. I think you're gone again, are you?
Well, I can hear you.
Okay, I've got you. I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet and you talk. But I wanted to ask you: do you find it difficult to watch your fights now and watch her take punishment?
Yeah, it is difficult, and I can imagine how her family feels. It must be nerve-wracking completely for them. It is difficult, obviously. She's such an icon, such a beautiful lady and a beautiful person. And, having shared some time, and I was very fortunate at Christmas when I was home. She came down to Wexford and we spent a few hours together and just had a chat and a cup of tea, and it was great just to spend time with her again. So she hasn't forgot her people and she's very grounded and down to earth. But as I say, all of us would like to see her now and move on at some stage, pretty soon. To move on and enjoy her life and enjoy the fruits of what she's earned as well. She's earned quite a substantial amount of money, so enjoy and have a good life and take a rest from the sport,
Yeah, amazing. I think we'd all love to eavesdrop on that cup of coffee. So do you reminisce about old fights and old times? Is that the gist of those get-togethers?
Yeah, we had good fun. Bridget, the mother, was with her as well, so we've known obviously for a long time, and we just had as we say, we had a bit of crack talking about a few things and incidents that happened with a few of the lads and sparring sessions and all sorts of stuff. It was good fun.
Of her status, Billy, you're obviously head coach at Team USA. There must be fighters that you're working with that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe they've all known about Taylor for a very long time and she's always had a huge status. But have you noticed maybe with the publicity of this fight that almost there's a newfound respect or acknowledgement of where Taylor is in the game?
Yeah, this side of the water, I suppose. It is. And I think anybody who's been in my squad knows about Taylor, because I'm always bragging about her. I'm always giving them hell about her and how good she was. So, and actually, two of the girls were sparring partners for Katie. They live in Boston, which is not far from where she's based. And she did go and spar with her at times when she's in camp, when it suits. So there's quite a few of them obviously that know her. Yeah, look, she'll have. I think this fight will then, will bring her to a new level of notoriety in the States. I think she was going around Connecticut, nobody knew her, but I think her time going around Connecticut with nobody knowing her, it's probably changed after Saturday night.
You said something earlier which stuck in my mind, caught my ear. Did you say Taylor has the fastest hand speed, male or female, that you've come across?
Yes, without doubt. Herself, I think Taylor was another really good. Clarissa Shields is up there, but I think without doubt, Katie has the greatest hand speed I've seen.
Right. Is that just God-given?
Well, I think we're born with a lot of things, and she was born with that, I think, and obviously there was nurture and around it as well throughout the years with her dad Pete training her, and then obviously in the high performance unit. But in general, her speed is what she was born with, and was a gift.
Well, listen, it's great to have you on. The line has just about behaved. I presume watching that.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating